Good evening. Welcome to May 9th meeting. Our meeting is going to begin starting at 7:05. If I could please have us call roll.
Mr. Calvo. Ms. Casals Munoz.
Present.
Ms. Garcia Robles is absent. Ms. Perez.
Present.
Mr. Rodriguez is absent. Mr. Tunidon. He is not present. And Mr. Zogby.
Present.
Madam President, you have enough members to conduct business.
Thank you. If we could please have the invocation be read by Mrs. Leal.
Lord, we pray for your guidance and direction and benefit of the city of Hialeah. Amen.
Amen. If we could please all rise and face the flag, the Pledge of Allegiance to be led by Councilmember Calvo.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Thank you. Could you please read us the meeting guidelines?
The following guidelines have been established by the city council. All lobbyists must register with the city clerk. As a courtesy to others, please refrain from using cellular telephones or other similar electronic devices in the council chamber. A maximum of 3 speakers in favor and 3 speakers in opposition will be allowed to address the council on any item pertaining. Each speaker's comments will be limited to 3 minutes. No signs or placards in support of or in opposition to an item or speaker shall be permitted within the council chamber. Any person, whether participating via web platform, telephonic conferencing, or other physical presence at City Hall, interested in making comments or posing questions on matters of public concern or on any item on the agenda, may do so during the meeting. Members of the public may address the city council on any item pertaining to city business during the comments and questions portion of the meeting. A member of the public is limited to 1 appearance before the city council, and the speaker's comments will be limited to 3 minutes. The public can view public meetings on the city's YouTube page. Members of the public may hear the meeting live through telephonic conferencing using any telephone or cellular phone service. A smart device or computer are not necessary to participate in the meeting if you join by phone. All persons participating via web platform will be muted during the meeting until called upon to be heard. Participation through Zoom requires a computer or smart mobile device with a microphone and web camera. The participant may elect to participate in the meeting using audio only or appear through both audio and video. The video function of all participants appearing through the video will be turned off until called upon to be heard.
Thank you, madam. We're going to move on to the presentation portion of the meeting. And today I'm happy to see a familiar name in tonight's presentation. We have Jasmine Liz Martinez, who is part of our Youth Advisory Board, who had an achievement and was crowned Miss Teen Universe Cuba. And I believe that this is by Councilmember Zogby. Councilmember, would you like to say anything on her behalf?
I'm very shy. I have nothing to add to this. But I'll take the mic anyway. Thank you.
Of course.
Name and address for the record. Thank you. Is it on? Can everybody hear me? Thank you. Well. We are honoring one of our finest who, like many young people in Hialeah, constantly renew our faith in the future. We're lucky. We have a lot of winners in Hialeah, and then every once in a while we have a double, triple, quadruple winner. Jasmine, this could be about you. Come up here, Jasmine Martinez. Thank you. So I got some notes, my dear, at the audience, because it's all about you. So I got some notes here because you're being recognized. Actually, we're calling this congratulating you for being crowned Miss Teen Universe Cuba. But that only tells part of the story. We had to put a title to this recognition, but the recognition on behalf of the mayor and all of us says that as mayor of the city of Hialeah, I take great pleasure. I'm speaking on behalf of the mayor, presenting you the certificate of appreciation to you in recognition of your contribution to our community. And that's a lot. That's a lot of contributions. So some of the contributions, and these notes are a few months old, and in a 17-year-old's life, a few months is an eternity. So maybe this has changed and gotten even better. So Jasmine is, as we know, and if you don't, you will know, she's multi-talented, hardworking, and very dedicated. Now you're a 17-year-old, right? I remember when I was 17.
It was just the other day.
The Beatles were still together as a band. Anyhow. You currently attend Hialeah Miami Lakes Senior High. You're a junior, right? Did you make National Honor Society this year? Again. I'm sorry, I'm holding.
I'm the future president of National Honor Society next year. Yes.
Wow. Wow. And maybe future president beyond that. Who knows? Anyhow, awesome. Congratulations. Says president of Gen Cleo
That's the environmental club.
at HML.
Yes.
Vice president, maybe you're president now, of the Justice Society and Drama Club. Still the same? Awesome. Certified climate speaker. Not like that European girl that, no, okay. That other 17-year-old volunteer at North Twin Lakes Elementary School. And I think you're the chair now, right? Not vice chair of the Hialeah Youth Advisory Board?
The vice chair.
You're the vice
Yeah.
chair. But quickly rising. Okay. You have a deep passion for the arts. You're bilingual. You are absolutely, which is a necessity for survival nowadays. You're environmentally aware and you're all about social justice. You're born and raised in a foreign exotic land of Hialeah, correct?
Yes.
Of a Cuban descent, a family of Cuban descent. Since the age of 9, you've represented the Hialeah, the beautiful city of Hialeah, and your Cuban roots and traditions across South Florida as a pageant queen. I remember you wearing the sash for like ever, and you were so proud. You are Miss Teen Hialeah Galaxy 2022, and of course, like we said, recently crowned with the international title, Miss Teen Universe Cuba. You're a youth ambassador. You've worked with different philanthropic and nonprofit organizations. One day you have to start making money, though. I'll give you that advice. Okay. Look at Calvo's example. Anyhow, and you're helping create a society that's more respectful, compassionate, and kind, that you and your generation will be occupying, way after we're all gone. As part of your platform, Jasmine is proud to serve as a role model and inspiration to younger generations. And she believes in the importance of a substantial education because inner beauty is forever. She loves the whole beauty pageant circuit, but she understands that what's inside is everlasting. And you've got both. So thank you so much. Bring your family up here. Can we come down here and take a picture? You've earned this. Thank you. Anything you would like to say?
Well, I grew up in the city and I've been working very hard to give back to my community since the very young age. And I'm just very thankful to have a family that supports me and is always there for me and everything that I need. And just to be here today and thank all of you for awarding me this wonderful recognition. And I'm just very thankful to live in Hialeah. So thank you, everyone. And yes, Hialeah forever.
All overdue. Dad, mom, mommy, brother, everybody wants to take the picture. You want to come up here, whatever you like. Thank you. Martinez family, what a great job. What a great job. Keep up the good work. And I hand the meeting back to the chair.
For the record, Councilmember Tundidor is present.
What is?
Okay. Oh, because she's not here. Okay. So one of us could do it. It's okay. All right, we're gonna move on to the comments and questions portion of the meeting. Is there anyone here tonight that would like to speak before the council? Good evening. Hi. Come on up. Hi, nice to have you.
Hi,
If
good
you could-
evening, thank
Good
you.
evening. We start with just your name and address for the record.
Okay, my name is Liliana Ferrandi and I'm here for my parents
Okay,
who are elderly and can't be. Their address is 50 East 54th Street. So I am here on behalf of my 89-year-old disabled parents, Hercules and Maria Ferrandi. They've lived at this address for 54 years. Since then, they've seen a radical change in their modest neighborhood. The single-family neighborhood has become illegally multi-family. Many of the surrounding properties have deficiencies which may or may not be legal. Farm animals roam the streets and destroy yards. Easements have been ignored and the fences moved impeding utility workers to reach meters and electric poles. The city has not solved this issue. As this is not bad enough, the new trend is the installation of mobile homes to be rented out, which is not only reduces the curb appeal of the properties and their value, but puts a burden on the sewer and waste systems, but also represents a hazard. I have some pictures here that show that the occupants directly behind my parents' house have removed the fence that separates the utility easement and installed a shed and a mobile home encroaching on said easement and my parents' legal property. My question is, are they hooked to the sewer? Are they getting their electricity? Where are they getting the electricity from? My immediate concern is that if the mobile home becomes engulfed in fire due to these makeshift connections, so will my parents' home. Given their age and disabilities, chances are they would not be able to get on in time. This is not only illegal, but reckless. This situation is causing needless stress on my parents and affecting their health. I ask you to please look into this. I was just told that there's not a law in place, but maybe something can be done. And I really thank you for your time.
thank you so much, Ms. Lillian. I apologize that your family is enduring this, and we do have the address on record. Is this something, just a quick question, is this something that you've reported to, if you could come back, just sorry. I don't know if you've reported this to.
No, I was gonna report it to code enforcement, but I learned about this meeting, so I said, okay, let me go and see what I can do.
Okay, we have someone here from the mayor's office that could follow up with you outside if you like, and you could note down and we'll have code enforcement follow up.
Okay,
All
thank you
right.
very much for your
Yes,
time.
absolutely.
Thank you again.
Thank you. All right, do we have anybody else that would like to speak on the record?
Hi,
Good
how are
evening.
you? Thank you. My name is Lily Azell, and I'm the USA Pickleball Ambassador for Miami-Dade County. And when Jenny reached out to me needing help in the city of Hialeah, I was very excited because I grew up in Hialeah. I went to Mylander Park. I went to Palm Springs Junior High way back when it was at 7 a.m. I'd be in school, and then I went to Hialeah Miami Lakes.
Nice.
And so
So
Hialeah is
welcome
very,
home.
thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
Hialeah is very near and dear to me. And I was very blessed. I was a latchkey kid growing up. I never was able to get a sport. I have a sport. I don't even know how to throw a ball. And at 49, 50 years old in Big Sky, Montana, I learned the sport of pickleball. This is all I needed growing up.
Oh,
This
wow.
was it. This is the investment. And I learned the sport and in 2015, came to Miami-Dade County, very far behind the 8 ball.
Mm.
And so I decided that I was going to make the change because kids and families, grandparents needed to be out in the parks playing this game. And it was very important. And so for me, it's been a labor of love. I'm a volunteer. The USA Pickleball is the governing organization for our sport. And so I basically volunteer my time to grow the sport in the entire county. So in Hialeah, I know there's a lot of players here, but there's also a lot of kids, a lot of families, a lot of grandparents that want to come together. This sport is such a community sport. And I'm so happy that you're all behind, seeing that you've got some dedicated courts coming. I'm super, excited and grateful because the little girl like me growing up where I didn't have a sport and I became a mountaineer. I became a biker. I rock climbed, Grand Teton, you name it, I did it. But those were very solitary sports.
Yeah.
Pickleball for us, it's about community. It's about bringing families together. It's about getting kids out off their phones. And the fastest growing segment of our sport is those under 24. I was in Mylander Park a couple of days ago. I was looking at these wonderful kids, these little ones, 8 to 12 years old, playing pickleball with the Udonis Haslem Foundation. They donated 2 courts, 2 pickle roll temporary courts. They had a blast. And I see that. And so what I'm saying is this is the perfect sport, I think, for families and for our kids. But I think also thinking long term, this sport has exploded. From when I just played in the US Open Pickleball Championships in Naples, Florida. And I won silver in my division, which was pretty exciting. There are thousands of players that go. So there is a huge opportunity. They have 64 courts in one location. And just like Naples, they have 48 courts in Daytona, 24 courts in Punta Gorda, you name it, around the country. This is completely exploded. And I truly believe because of where Hialeah is situated and what is going on in the county at large, because I've been working at it since 2018, I think City of Hialeah has potential to really have an economic impact on its city and really benefit its residents. So I want to thank you all. I'm very excited to be here. Like I said, I can't believe I'm in front of you all doing this as a little girl. I didn't have anything to play. Now I do.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, congratulations on winning the silver and for the movement that you've caused. It's a ripple effect, and I'm happy to see that a woman is leading it and a woman from Hialeah. So we're very proud. I know that it's picked up here in our city. There's a pickleball court by our home in McDonald's Park. And a lot of people tell me, a lot of adults go, they don't know people, they just sit on the bench. And like you said, it's a social kind of engagement. And people just say, hey, you want to play? And they just hop on. And now it's 4 people playing that don't know each other, that are from the neighborhood. And it's fun. You make friends and it's social and you're active and you're healthy. So thank you for that. We appreciate it.
Thank you, through the chair. And also,
Yes, sir.
I want to add that they're very low key about it, very humble, but our city attorney and our zoning director are actually almost went pro. So so we have some stars here as well.
That's so great. All right, we're moving on. Anybody else for comments and questions? Yes, sir. Go ahead. You're recognized.
My name is Zoran Mihailovich. I live at 1605 Pennsylvania Avenue in Miami Beach. I gave Melissa my card because my name is not that usual. My fellow ambassador invited me over here to share our experience. I'm also USA Pickleball Ambassador for Miami Beach. So Lily invited me to share our experience and also to visit exotic and beautiful Hialeah, like Carl said. We have, for about a year now, we have 6 courts in one place and 2 courts in another outdoors. The best testimony of how the courts are used and the growth of pickleball is that this morning somebody texted me that they had 24 people playing on those 6 courts and a few people waiting. Last night I was there. We got the lights recently, a couple of months ago. Last night I was there. around 9 o'clock, all courts full
Hmm.
under the lights. So I thank you for your decision to build those courts, and I guarantee you that they will be used a lot, and soon you will want more. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Sanchez or Mr. Festa, how many courts do we have now in total? I know we have it at McDonald's. Not enough. We have a few.
We have 4 at McDonald. We actually added 2 this weekend and then 2 at Babcock. And this would be 6 at Goodlet to bring us to a total of
12?
12. Yes.
Wow.
Plus the
Okay.
2 temporary courts at Mylander that were installed this
Oh,
weekend. as well.
good.
So,
All right. Are we?
yes. The 6 at the 6 existing are overlays over tennis courts. Yeah,
Yeah.
the new ones will be dedicated.
Yeah.
Yes.
The new ones that are growing are dedicated just for pickleball.
Yes.
Fantastic. Well, that's great to hear.
Just a reminder, and not to be a party pooper to all this, clearly there's a demand and the department is looking at different areas within their parks. But we also get demands for dog parks. We also have a tennis community out there that also ask. There are kids that use basketball courts. I mean, our parks, I think all of you know, are used to the extent possible, continuously, right? And that's not to mention all the soccer academies that are in our parks, all the baseball teams that are using our facility. So, but we are making a commitment to see where we could either retrofit areas to include pickleball courts or just exclusive pickleball courts. And that's something that obviously we want to do to meet the demand out there. We may be, late to the game, but it's clear. And a lot of people in my staff play it. A lot of people in my home play it, and they talk about it continuously. So we're trying to meet the demand as quickly as possible, but just want everybody to take into the mindset that there's a lot of other demands on our parks that we try to accommodate as best we can. So, but these 2 gentlemen are not only wired into this pickleball phenomenon, they're definitely trying to push as much as they can to get as many courts as quickly as possible that we can make available. Okay.
Yeah. And those courts all have lights too, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yes.
a lot of people usually play it after work and it's busy. Well, that's
Either
good to
early
know.
morning or in the evening.
Yeah.
Yes.
Fantastic. Well, thank you guys for that.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any other comments or questions on the dais? Oh, yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Andy Vega and I play pickleball. And I live at 6105 West 14th Court. Been living in Hialeah for 52 years.
Oh.
All right. And I definitely want to promote this game. A lot of you know Reggie over here. And we, for the past year, have been driving up to Plantation to play there like 3 times a week. All right. So it's, and there's a lot of demand. Those courts up there are full to capacity, 17 courts, and they're always full. I would like to suggest, because just brought it up a little bit about the lights. Lights here shut down at 9. All right. Over there, it's 10 o'clock. I would suggest maybe considering that extra hour, because especially in the summer, it gets very hot. And most of the time we play easily 3 hours. So if it's light until 8 o'clock at night and it shuts off at 9, it gets very hot and exhausting. So maybe a little consideration for that. And also we were talking about in our group that play pickleball on the weekends, parks close at 5. So maybe we can extend the hours a little bit, just something to consider. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vega, for your input. And this is the place to say that because we have the staff available to just listen to those concerns. So thank you for that input. We appreciate it. Anybody else? Yes. Hi.
Mr. Mayor, council members, David Perez, 322 East 43rd Street. It's a pleasure seeing you all. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on their comments. I'm here today because there's an item on the agenda regarding planning and zoning. It's planning and zoning item number 7. I ask that If the applicant or the applicant's representative is given an opportunity to speak, I would also ask that the residents be given an opportunity to speak as well. This is pretty much the same item that came before you last year. And again, there was a large public outcry against the zoning change. So again, if the applicant or the applicant's representative is given an opportunity to speak, I would ask, even though it is first reading, that the public also be given an opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any other comments and questions? All right, seeing that there is none, is there any online? No. All right, let's move on to the announcements and amendments to the agenda.
Items PZ2 and PZ3 are postponed until the city council meeting of June 13, 2023.
Thank you so much. All right, let's move on to board appointments.
Proposed resolution appointing Anthony J. Gonzalez as a member of the Beautification Committee beginning on May 9th, 2023 for a 2-year term ending on May 8th, 2025 as one of the 4 city council appointments, non-resident elector.
Thank you. I know that this board had scheduled to meet for the first time and they had to cancel because one of the members had couldn't fulfill their role on the board, on the committee. So this person is willing to join our beautification board. They have experience in other boards. We did amend the committee to have someone that is a non-resident, and this would qualify as that person. I believe Anthony is here today. He also works for the office of Representative Borrero, so he has a little bit of knowledge in other areas. Would you like to come before us, Anthony? And in order for them to resume, they are missing one person in that committee to be able to hold their meeting, their first meeting. We also have another member here that's with us tonight from that board.
Anthony Gonzalez, my address is 10341 Southwest, 150 Terrace. I'm very happy and thank you, Councilwoman Perez, for allowing me to do this. I'm really happy to serve the residents of Hialeah the same way I've done for Sweetwater and the current residents in my job working for Dave Borrero. So I want to continue that legacy and that thing with the residents of Hialeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. So the pleasure of the council. I have a motion by Councilmember Tundidor and I have a second by Councilwoman Casals Munoz. Can we please call the roll?
Ms. Perez,
Yes.
Mr. Tundidor, Mr. Zogby,
Yes.
Mr. Calvo,
Yes.
Ms. Casals Munoz. Motion carries. The item is approved.
Thank you. Congratulations. All right, let's move on to our consent agenda. Would any council member like to pull an item?
Through the chair.
Yes, you're recognized. Item H. Okay, any other member?
Yeah, through the chair, items D, E, and G.
D, E, and
G.
G. All right, anybody else? I have a
Second.
motion by Councilwoman Casals Munoz and I have a second by Councilmember Tundidor. Can we please call the roll?
Mr. Tundidor,
Yes.
Mr. Zogby,
Yes.
Mr. Calvo,
Yes.
Ms. Casals Munoz, Ms. Perez.
Yes.
Motion carries. The consent agenda has passed except items D, E, G, and H.
All right. Item D, please.
Proposed resolution authorizing the fiscal year 2023, supporting law enforcement agencies and seeking accreditation application. And if awarded, the acceptance of a grant from the United States Department of Justice, Office of Community-Oriented Policing Services for the total amount of $246,376 for the City of Hialeah Police Department for payment of membership fees to become accredited, power DMS software, travel expenses to attend the Commission of Accreditation of Law Enforcement Agencies conference, sworn personnel overtime, and hiring an experienced accreditation consultant and authorizing the mayor or his designee to execute all necessary documents in furtherance thereof, and authorizing the establishment of a separate interest-bearing trust account designated for this program, a copy of which is attached hereto and made a part hereof as Exhibit 1, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you, Councilmember Caldwell.
Yeah, through the chair, I'd like to just understand essentially what this grant entails, kind of an overview of the program.
Do we have somebody from the department that would like to speak on behalf? Thank you, Chief.
All right, good evening, George Fuente, 5555 East States Avenue. It's a grant that was applied for in regards to getting the department accredited. As you all are aware, I've mentioned along with the mayor that I would like to see the City of Hialeah Police Department nationally accredited. This will be adopting national best standards for our agency. This grant will allow us to use monies for conferences, certain software, travel expenses. Over time, that'll be related to the accreditation process. All these items that will be part of this endeavor. It's a task at hand. It'll be something that I'm hoping we get done in a couple of years. But that's the gist of what these monies are used for.
Can you please go into detail, like what does it mean to be accredited? And how does the city benefit with that?
Well, you adopt national best standards. How does the city benefit where now liabilities in regards to lawsuits are now viewed differently from parties that are trying to sue the city, because they know that the city police department is using national standards. It's not just general orders and standard orders of procedures that we're going based on what we think. No, it's what nationally is being used. That's one aspect of it. And the other aspect of it is the training that our officers receive are also standards across the nation.
Okay, and then what do you mean by the software? What's that about?
Certain software that's required in order to put out our general orders and our officers review, sign, testing that they understand, keeping all the data in order, being organized. You know, there's a lot of issues with agencies being disorganized, and this would keep us all in track from the officer's first day throughout his or her career, and keeping all the information and data in one specific area. And software is what's required for that.
Okay, so it's like a data management software?
Yes, there's different softwares that right now we're in the process of evaluating and analyzing everything that's required.
Okay, and then as far as the conference, what's that about?
There's several conferences throughout the year that accreditation managers and different individuals within the agency would benefit from attending. And those are conferences that explain the process, the what to do's, what not to do's from other agencies, from the actual CALEA, the certification arm that they give in different parts of the US. So that requires travel.
Okay, so who typically goes to those conferences?
Whoever would benefit from it, from the accreditation manager to anyone else that, you know, I deem would benefit the agency.
Okay, and then the grant is for what period of time?
It's I believe a 2-year grant, but there I would have to review to ensure I'm not giving you false information on that.
Okay, and the department is gonna run the grant, or is the grants department gonna run it? Like to ensure that we're in compliance?
Yes, I have a grants coordinator on the department.
Oh, okay, yeah, understood. All right, that's enough for me. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. You're recognized.
Thank you. Chief, if things remain the same, it's my understanding that in this case, your goal is to make the department CALEA certified. Grantors like to give grants to departments who have their ducks in line. And if you're CALEA certified, we can chase a lot of money out.
That would be beneficial.
So I think we can recover this money once we're CALEA certified, opening up
qualifying us for more grants, more government money. So this will come back to us. I
Well, this is
believe.
what we're applying to receive as a grant. So it's not
Yeah.
coming out of.
But it
out of our
continues.
pocket.
It's a gift, the gift that
Absolutely.
keeps
If
on
you're
giving
CALIA
once you're certified.
If you're CALIA certified, many grants out there will not give you a grant if you're not certified, if you're not CALIA certified.
Absolutely. Good deal. Thank you, sir. That's it.
Thank you. I have a motion by Councilwoman Casals Munoz. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Councilmember Tundidor. Please call the roll.
Mr. Tundidor,
Yes.
Mr. Zogby,
Yes.
Mr. Calvo,
Yes.
Ms. Casals Munoz. Ms. Perez.
Yes,
Motion carries. The item is approved.
thank you. Let's move on to item E.
Request permission to award City of Hialeah invitation to bid number 2022-23-3210-00041 Tree Canopy Restoration Project CDBG Grant to SFM Landscape Services LLC, sole source bidder, and issue a purchase order to this vendor for the furnishing, planting, and watering of trees in accordance with the specifications of the Tree Canopy Restoration Project invitation to bid in a total cumulative expense amount not to exceed $249,892.50. The funding for this expenditure is to be drawn as follows: $187,585.35 is to be drawn against CDBG Fund Capital Outlay Tree Planting Community Canopy Improvement Account Number 103-8329-541-630. $62,307.15 is to be drawn against the Streets Fund Capital Outlay Landscaping Account Number 101-3210-541-648 after a transfer is made in the amount of $65,000 from the Street Fund Construction Capital Account Number 101-3210-541-651.
Thank you, ma'am. You're recognized.
Yep, thank you through the chair. I just wanted to understand exactly how we are picking, I guess, these streets. I noticed a few that would be the recipients of these new trees.
Good evening, Jose Sanchez, Director of Streets, 900 East 56th Street. These are low canopy areas that we're trying to improve as part of our reforestation efforts with the city. It's not only my department, but also parks. We're trying to increase the canopy throughout the city. This one in particular, we're going to be landscaping 28th Avenue, beginning at the southern city limit at that area, which is approximately 52nd Street. And we're going to extend up to 76th Street, more or less. We had other areas in mind, but based on the prices that we received, we adjusted the budget to what we had allocated for landscaping this year.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that 28th Ave, and then I saw, I believe it was East 4th from 9 to 12. I think the other one is 17th Street. I'm just curious because some of these are a little bit less transited. So why we're picking these over, I guess, some of the bigger arteries.
We're only going to do 28th Avenue. We cut back the scope. The other two locations, we didn't have enough funds to landscape those, but those two locations that we were going to do, we selected those because we're reconstructing that road. So to install a drainage, we're going to be removing pretty much everything that's there. So we plan on coming back later on to plant trees in that area. We couldn't do it with this particular grant, but we'll look at that area, and we're going to use that area, other funds to improve the canopy in that area.
Okay, so you're only doing 28th Ave, you said from where to
From 52nd to 76th Street.
52nd, 76th Street on 28th Ave. Okay.
Yeah, our city boundaries in that area is from 52nd to 84th. So we're pretty much doing most of the stretch.
Okay, understood. So just to reiterate, the reason we're doing that over something, I guess, a little bit more central to the city is what exactly? It was just easier to plant there?
No, we're trying to, there's some trees there, but we don't have a full canopy, so we're trying to improve the canopy in that area. The other two that I mentioned were reconstruction projects where we pretty much got everything from one end of the sidewalk to the other, and the drainage usually goes on the swale. So in this particular case, on those two particular cases, for for the drainage work, which is more important because their area was significant flooding. We come back after the project is completed, and whether this grant or any other grant that comes on board, and replant the trees that we removed originally.
Okay, I saw a couple meetings ago, just probably a couple months ago, actually. We approved a canopy master plan for the city or something to that end. Is that something that we're following with this proposal today?
I believe what you're referring to is the Neat Streets grant that we applied for and we got
Yeah, it had
awarded.
like the maps of everywhere, like, you know, around the city. It was like a master plan for canopy coverage.
Yeah, it was a map tied to that, and it was to determine the canopy of the city, which I think is about 7%. And that particular grant, if you were under 10%, instead of having a 50-50 match, it was a 75-25% match.
Right.
We qualified for the 75%, and we teamed up with Parks, and we put out a project. The bid should be opening soon, and we plan on planting over, how much is it, Willie? Like over 200 trees. Some will be in Bucky Dent and the area around Bucky Dent. I'm sorry, Babcock Park.
Yeah, I guess just my question is, you know, a resident comes to us and they're like, you know, why not in my neighborhood, right? Why is this happening in this neighborhood, for example? I'm not sure what to answer them based on. Is there?
There's
like
a lot of factors that go into it. I mean, there'll be.
I guess I'm asking, is there a method to the madness? Right.
Yeah, we try to select areas at first where there's a lot of pedestrian movement. The other scenario will be reconstruction projects. You know, we're gutting the trees in that area for drainage improvements. We try to come back at a later time and replace all the trees that were there. Some of them are triggered by other projects where we remove certain amount of canopy and we're required to meet certain canopy mitigation. So, I mean, there's a series of factors that go into play, and we try to pick the best areas, whether it's high transited areas, parks. If we're improving a certain location, we'll attack that neighborhood and improve that neighborhood.
Right. But right now we're not following like, I guess, like a set plan or like a set, like we're going to do this year and then next year we're going to target this area. Is it more kind of like whenever we get the funding, we kind of just try to find where we can put the trees?
No, I mean, we don't have a plan in place like in writing, but I mean, we monitor certain areas, and there's sometimes we get input from residents that they require that they're asking for trees in that area. It could also be triggered to prevent illegal dumping. It could be triggered for areas that there's parking issues. I mean, we get complaints every day for different things, and we put those in our radar, and sometimes those areas come into play as well. So, I mean, we don't have a defined plan. It's just based on input from the city and other departments and things like that. But yeah, there's no defined, nothing on paper.
Gotcha. And just so that we're on the subject, right? Like, what is the current policy, from my knowledge, like homeowners as they're like buying new properties and then potentially cutting down the trees that exists, you know, right there in front of their house, which technically is part of the swale area?
Yeah, it's a two-step process. If somebody wants to remove a tree, they gotta get a permit from DERM, and then a permit from us. What DERM does, it identifies the species, whether it's protected or not, and they say whether it can be removed or not. They usually come to us for authorization. And if we're both in agreement that the tree could go, then the property owner is given two options, usually either pay to a mitigation bank for those, whatever canopy they removed. They could use it somewhere else. They use those funds to replace that canopy, or they're able to plant trees to replace that canopy. Right. Depending on what type of tree they decide to plant, there's a chart where it credits a certain amount of square footage of canopy. We usually select that option when it's in the right of way, because if they pay into the mitigation bank, it could go anywhere in the county. By having them replace the trees, mitigate with tree planting, it will ensure that those trees come back to the city, not somewhere somewhere else, another city. It could be the city of Miami, city of
Right.
Miami Springs.
Do you know how many, like, let's say within the last year, how many people have applied for like a permit to remove a tree from streets?
Yeah, they're not that much. I mean, probably, I want to say more than 20 that I know of. They're not that common, but when they do come in, I mean, that's the plan. We try to have them plant trees and within the city to mitigate whatever they removed.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, because I just saw, I mean, just by where I live, right, a couple blocks from where I live, a bunch of these like big oak trees were cut down recently. I guess they were interfering with the owner's use of the property, but you know, we plant some, but then most people just end up cutting it down is I guess the big issue, really. I saw the trees that were listed here. I think some of them that kind of caught my eye was like the Japanese fern, for example. You know, why is that part of the grant that it's mandated, or like why are we picking those over others?
No, we try to, that one's not a Florida native, but it's done well in the city. They're very nice. They're very proportional. The canopy is very proportional. Since we're only doing 28th Avenue, we're only going to be putting in 2 of them, which will be the green buttonwood and the Simpson stoppers. The other ones were for the other projects, which we're not going to be doing.
Okay. Yeah, I
But
saw that we're
most
not
of the-
doing any like oaks, for example.
Yeah, most of the trees that we select are trees that we've already had experience that have done well in the city and they don't cause major issues.
Okay. Who does the ongoing like maintenance of the trees? Like watering them, or is it kind of, it just gets planted and then nature takes its course? How does it work?
No, depends. If it's within medians and things like that, the city does, we do, whether by contract or our own forces.
Mhm.
If it's in front of a property in the soil area, the budding property owner by ordinance is required to do the maintenance. We do the initial watering, whether it's city forces or the contractor, until the tree gets established. And from that point on, it will be the budding property owner's responsibility.
The ones that we're doing here, the buttonwood and the Simpson stopper, are those high maintenance, low maintenance, medium?
No, low maintenance.
Low maintenance. All right. And then I guess my last question was just on, so I saw that this company, SFM Landscape Services, that they were the sole bidder in our case.
Correct.
I guess I'm just kind of confused why somebody else wouldn't have bid. If you had, I guess, any knowledge from putting these out in the past.
This particular one, we were in a time crunch, so there was time restrictions. Maybe that was a deterrent for other companies. We have to spend 80% of the grant by the end of this month and the rest by the following month. You know, we had the option of re-advertising, but considering the tight schedule, we would have never made.
How long was the advertisement up for?
I believe it was about a month.
About a month. Okay.
So, yeah, so there's no chance of re-advertising and being able to meet the requirements of the grant. So it was either we proceed with just this bid or give up the grant.
Understood. All right, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome.
Thank you so much. That's all, Councilman? I didn't know you had such a detailed green thumb on plants. I need to do a Google search on some of those Japanese ferns, but I know that some of the parks have been a top priority. I know Cotson got some trees and Babcock. And now Mr. Sanchez is gonna go home and Google some of those trees and make sure.
And look, the pickleball people se fueron. Porque-
Yeah, they're done. They don't want to hear another one. Bye, guys. All right. Motion by Councilwoman Gonzalez Munoz. Do I have a second? I have a second by Councilmember Tundido. Can we please call roll?
Mr. Zogby,
Yes.
Mr. Calvo,
Yes.
Ms. Casals Munoz. Yes. Ms. Perez.
Yes.
Mr. Tundidol.
Yes.
Motion carries. The item is approved.
Wonderful. Moving on to item H, please. No, G. G first.
Proposed resolution retroactively authorizing the use of State Housing Initiative Partnership Program funds expended through the City Safe Home Program in an amount not to exceed $125,000 for rehabilitation of single-family dwelling owned and occupied by Teresita Garcia located at 120 East 44th Street as allowed by the city's local housing assistance plan, authorizing the mayor or his designee and the city clerk as a testing witness to execute any and all agreements in furtherance of the project on behalf of the city and providing for an effective date.
Thank you so much. Councilman?
Through the chair.
Yes.
I was just curious how we, I guess, for our knowledge is, for our purpose, how does a person get a grant like this? What does the process look like? What's the application timeline? Are there any more availabilities right now for future applicants? Things of that nature.
What was the last question? Is there what?
If there's any more availability for these types of grants, these
Oh,
programs.
okay. Hi, good evening.
Good evening, Maria Ruiz, Housing and Community Services. The program under the state's program that we do here, we do it online through the city's portal on the website. In order for you to be into the queue to receive funds, you must have already been qualified, which means you submitted all the documents, we've income certified you, and you help us meet the different ratios that we must meet for the state for the distribution of funds to AMI, which means we have to prioritize people earning under 60%, AMI with 65% of our funds. So Ms. Teresita went through the process, submitted all her documentation, got income certified, and she's ready to go. We have over $4 million in queue to be able to use. We have several projects that are bottled up right now because we're trying to get personnel in place, but there are still funds available. So we do encourage residents who either want to assistance with rehab of their own home, or if they want to become first-time home buyers, we have funds available right now.
How does the first-time home buyers work?
In essence, it's the same process. You have to be income qualified. That is the single biggest driver. And then you have to be able to purchase a home that meets the AMI cost for our area, which is about $410,000. For the majority of people, that would usually be condos at this point because the market's so high.
Understood. And they would have to make 60% AMI as well, or they have higher?
No, yeah, you can earn up to 65% AMI to qualify for the maximum amount that you can receive. You can earn up to 120%, but we must first meet and expend the 75% under the guidelines in order to do that. And otherwise, we have to prioritize low income before we can help moderate income.
Do you have a dollar figure right now? What's 65% AMI?
It is around $41,000, I believe.
41,000. Okay. And then for the
That's for a household of one. Obviously, it
Household
goes
of
up as
right. And then for the home renovation one, it's also 65% AMI as well?
That's the priority, yes.
For priority.
Yeah.
And that could be anything from roof or painting a house or window replacements.
So the vast majority of people who are walking in now are not passing their insurance inspections.
Okay.
And almost everybody needs a roof replacement, followed by the impact windows.
Okay, can you detail what that looks like then for the insurance part?
For the most part, our people, when their roofs are being inspected by the insurance company, if they deem them to be not up to standard, they won't renew their insurance. And if you have a mortgage that's on your property, you're going to need to get insurance. So you need to make that repair in order to keep your mortgage in compliance.
Is it like a 10-year roof or 15-year? What?
They're minimum 15 years,
15
but it
years.
also depends on what style of roof you actually put up on the building. Keep in mind, in some cases, you have HOAs who help dictate those standards.
Okay, so before they can even apply, just to understand this correctly, before they even apply, they have to have the insurance on the property
No, they have to have the insurance once we provide the service.
after they provide.
Correct, because we're going to be putting a mortgage on that property.
Understood.
Correct.
Understood. Okay. Okay. All right. So then there's still, just to be clear, there's still availability right now, $4 million for people to keep applying for this.
That is correct.
And the folks that we already have, I guess, in the pipeline, what's it looking like? I guess turnaround time. Is this a
Well,
year
there are-
process or less?
Sure. There are 22 people in the pipeline right now. The vast majority of them are still pending documentation that is required for us to certify them. Everyone else either has come to the commission. We have one additional one, I believe, that didn't make to the cut to this meeting. And we have several others that we believe in the next 30 days should be able to qualify.
Understood. All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Any other questions? Do I have a motion? I have a motion by Councilwoman Casals Munoz and I have a second by Councilmember Zogby. Please call the roll.
Mr. Calvo,
Yes.
Ms. Casal Munoz,
Yeah.
Ms. Perez,
Yes.
Mr. Tundidor,
Yes.
Mr. Zogby.
Yes.
Motion carries. The item is approved.
Thank you. Item H, please.
Proposed resolution appointing City of Hialeah Councilmember Vivian Casals Munoz as the city's representative to the Miami-Dade County League of Cities.
Thank you. Yes, you're recognized.
This, thank you. I'm sorry. This item was to nominate,
You.
to nominate me for the League of Cities, but it was, I was nominated by the executive board to be part of the executive board of the League of Cities. So I would not be able to do this either way. I can't be a member and be on the executive board. So this was, it's up to the mayor, but we have somebody that was there from last year, if I'm not mistaken. And I know it's on a yearly basis. So I didn't know if you wanted to remove this or name somebody else or leave who's there.
Well, my understanding was that we don't have to remove anybody.
Correct.
If I understand correctly. The role that you would be playing would be on the executive board.
Correct.
So in essence, Hialeah would have two members in the league, no? One on the
No.
executive board and one as a general member?
Correct, as a member, yes.
Okay, so I'm a
So we
little
can leave-
confused. I'm a little confused by what you said earlier, that you
You
couldn't
could-
do something?
I couldn't, I can't be a member and be on the executive board as a same. So, but we don't need a resolution to be on the executive board because the executive board is the one that chooses who they want on their board.
All
So
right,
it's not through the city per se, it's whoever.
But would you be serving through Hialeah Park as an executive member?
No. I can't serve as Hialeah Park. I have to serve, the League of Cities is only for elected officials.
So then,
I go to the meetings as a, oh my God, what's that word? As an associate member through the park because I was not a member of the League of Cities. So
okay, now I'm really confused.
yeah, me
But
too.
so the question
I
is,
go to,
can you serve?
Hialeah
Can
Park
you
has
serve?
nothing to do with this. Hialeah Park is an associate member and I go representing Hialeah Park before because there was another member for the city of Hialeah. Now the executive board has an opening and they have nominated me.
Okay,
So they, because I'm going to be on the executive board, I can't be a member anyways. So I don't know if we should have another member. We have the
So then she
executive board
can't
and the
serve as
regular
a
member.
So then.
as I said earlier, I'm completely confused now. So the question is, can you serve on the executive board?
I could serve as the executive board
Okay.
because
and-
I am an elected official,
Got it,
yes.
got it, okay. And can.
And I am
council-
appointed with your blessing, they asked if the mayor had somebody else that would want that position,
And I said,
correct?
fine, okay.
Correct.
And does that affect Councilman Cabo's role as far as? being-
No, no,
Okay.
he could stay as a
So
member.
what you're saying is that this item is not necessary then?
It's not necessary.
Okay, so then just let's show the item withdrawn then, so.
Which one? I just
We-
wanted to clarify.
just lost
Apparently, my clarification wasn't well taken.
Okay. all right,
Okay, so
Motion to withdraw.
motion to,
We've lost those 5 minutes of our lives.
So we have a motion to withdraw the
but I gave you
item
candy,
H
so that made up. All right.
by Councilwoman Casals Munoz. Do I have a second? Do I need a second?
Second.
I have a second.
Wait, what did we just?
We're withdrawing the item.
Withdraw the item.
Yes,
We don't need to vote on. We don't do that.
no, right? It's withdrawn. All right, perfect. We're moving on to an administrative item. Ordinance 11A, please.
First reading of proposed ordinance amending the Hialeah Code of Ordinances, Chapter 62 entitled Parks and Recreation, amending Section 62-1 definitions and creating Section 62-26 entitled Smoking in Parks Prohibited to prohibit smoking in all city parks and imposing penalties in violation of the prohibition, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing penalties for violation hereof, providing for a severability clause, providing for inclusion in the code, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you so much, ma'am. So this is an item that we've been working on with legal. and with our Parks Department as well. We've reached out to the Florida Health Department as well to get some input. I don't know if many of you council members remember that about a year ago, we passed an ordinance that we worked with the police department, with our business tax and licensing department on vaping. And we just saw in the news that there was a store that shut down because of our effort in passing this ordinance. So this is a continuation of our effort with tobacco-free ordinance here in the city. This is something that the city's been a leader in these kind of movements for many years. And I've wanted to take this role. I wanted to take this leadership position and in being role models in our parks. The ordinance that we passed last year, legal has informed us that many other municipalities have been calling to get a copy of it to mimic that ordinance within their city, and protecting students, protecting parks, and issuing this 1,000 radius distance from these stores opening near children. So it's important to know that what you do and what you voted on has a ripple effect, and we're doing good throughout the community. So I'm going to leave it now to Alex to kind of give a little bit of detail on what we've been working on.
Good evening, everybody. Alex Mugristo, Assistant City Attorney, 501 Palm Avenue. So the basis of this ordinance pretty much starts off with the Florida Clean Indoor Air Act. I believe it's Florida Statute 369. So what the Clean Indoor Air Act prohibits is smoking tobacco or using any vapor generating devices in an indoor workplace. And that obviously has some certain exceptions. One exception would be if you sell more alcohol than food, then you would be able to smoke indoors at that point. The act also prohibits any cities, municipalities, or counties to have a more stringent regulation than the Florida statute allows for. So it preempts us from regulating anything relating to smoking. So
I'm sorry, through the chair.
Go ahead.
Alex, just a
Yes,
quick question. So
sure.
like a cigar lounge?
No.
No, right? Okay.
It's pretty interesting actually, because you'll see when I write the definitions of what smoking is, it typically doesn't include unfiltered cigars. The Florida legislature has carved out that portion to allow for that. Why, I don't know.
Environmental.
Got it. Got it.
Melissa, this doesn't work. Melissa, this doesn't work. Can you just go to the next slide? Okay. So in response to the Indoor Air Act, I'm sorry, the legislature initiated House Bill 105. House Bill 105 makes an amendment to the act, and it allows counties and municipalities to restrict smoking and vaping within public beach accesses and public parks in which the municipality or county owns. The House Bill 105 also renamed the title to the Florida Clean Air Act, so it was a more broad application. So as you can see, it doesn't limit the act to the indoor spaces. So, you know, our ordinance, what we proposed is relatively simple. It would make it unlawful for anybody to smoke in a public park or a park property. And then you can see what the definition is for smoking and vaping. And Mr. Junidor, as you can see at the end of the smoking definition, it does not include unfiltered cigars. So the two definitions that you see up there mimic the Florida statute. We didn't do anything new. That's exactly what the Florida statute says that smoking and vaping is. So that is what would be prohibited in parks and park property. We also added penalties, and this is, you know, one of the discussions that I know we're here to talk about tonight that we've spoken about with Ms. Perez. You know, I looked at different municipalities and what they propose and what they're doing. And this is what I came up with. The first violation would be a penalty for a $100 fine. A second offense would be a $200 fine, and any further offenses would result in a $500 fine.
If I may interrupt you right there. So this is something that I wanted to amend. That first penalty, I didn't want to incur $100 fine. I think that the whole point of this ordinance is to educate our youth. And I believe that what we should do and would make the best impact is to have the minor that's 22 and younger, if they are smoking in our public parks, have to take a course. So there is courses that are available that they do get a certificate that we would get back and there would be no penalty incurred. And this way they would understand some of the effects, some of the harmful chemicals that are within these vapes. And really the whole point of this is not to punish people, it's to help them, right? And I think that's what we should do as a first penalty, especially if you're 22 and younger. And I think that's something that we should be proud of. We're not here to make money off of this. This is not for that purpose. This is for us to be leaders in our community. And we could discuss that second fine if then we want to, have them take another course and incur a fine. But I think we should agree. We should agree on that course. And I know that there's someone online that could give us the appropriate measure where they do follow up and they give us a certificate and they send it back for us to monitor to ensure that the person that incurred this penalty follows up. And they're online if we have any questions. Yes.
Free class that they're giving?
Yes,
The class is free and is a class local?
they could come to us. Yeah.
Okay.
If we have, we could have it either online or we could host it in a conference room if we wanted to.
So, besides the discussion here today, we can definitely make amendments to the second reading as we see fit. And like Monica said, you can see it there in lieu of the first fine, we've included in this ordinance that they can take a class. So from there on, it's up to you guys.
Yes, sir.
Alex, I have an interesting question.
Sure.
And this is for our law department. So somebody smoking in the park, under 22, over 22. Who's going to enforce this? What are the mechanics? First penalty, second, it's all nice. Who enforces that?
We have code enforcement officers that can enforce the code. For a code enforcement officer to enforce the code, he clearly has to see the violation occurring. Another way to enforce the code is through the police department. Our police officers can serve as code enforcement.
I don't know about that. Can they?
Yes, it's a policy decision.
They can actually issue a local citation, a police officer?
Yes, sir. You've had them serve in that capacity before.
Currently?
No, I don't
Okay.
believe currently.
Yeah, I don't know if that went well before, but okay, because that's the only thing I see here, that the enforcement is, you got to call a code enforcement officer to come and look over there, look what's going on. That's the only problem. And
It's also,
it's a great thing. I just don't know. And how,
it's also under Florida statute, anybody under the age of 21 cannot possess it.
That. We
So
used to give fines. The county used to, when I was a police officer, we'd get fines. That went terribly wrong. The county had to stop doing that. They were like, pretty much, they were not arrests, but they were like issued affidavits of arrest and they had to show up to court and pay a fine.
Right.
But the enforcement there, they didn't want us doing that anymore as police officers.
Right.
And so that's what I see now. I don't know. I just don't know what the challenge of enforcement would be.
like Ms. Bravo said, it would be a policy decision whether or not they do use police officers in the capacity, but it is available.
Okay.
Through the chair.
Yes, sir, you're recognized.
I mean, so we've had this discussion on enforcement several times now, right? So we started when I proposed the election integrity ordinance where we said we didn't want to use police officers to enforce our code. And then it came back again when we were talking about the MOU that we signed with the county to enforce their ordinances. But the conversation that day was that although they would be enforcing county ordinances, they wouldn't necessarily be enforcing Hialeah ordinances, was kind of the policy decision back then, if I remember correctly. And then now we're tasked with it today. I guess from a very practical perspective, I just wanted to go into some of this nitty gritty stuff. So you're including cigars in this ordinance. So for example,
No,
if-
cigars are not included. They're
it says
excluded.
including cigars.
Oh.
Smoking means inhaling, exhaling, burning, carrying, or possessing any lighted tobacco product, including cigarettes, cigars, pipe tobacco, or any other lighted tobacco product,
With the exception of unfiltered cigars.
with the exception of unfiltered cigars.
Mhm.
So cigars are not included. Okay.
By Florida statute.
All right, so no cigars, but for example, if I was smoking, let's say marijuana, would this ordinance cover that?
You would be breaking the law
How?
because you can't smoke marijuana in public.
Well, but in Miami-Dade County, they decriminalized the possession of marijuana up to 20 grams.
Right, it's decriminalized, but you still can't smoke it in public.
Right, but what I'm saying is there's no enforcement of that, right? There's no penalty. If it's decriminalized, sure, okay, yeah, you're breaking the law, but there's no penalty.
It's a fine.
Right.
This proposes a fine. The statutes the statutes impose non-criminal violations themselves, and this ordinance only relates to tobacco products.
Okay, so if you smoke marijuana, you get a fine, and the fine is $100. But what we're talking about here is $100 the first time, and then we're talking all the way up to $500. So we're actually making it a little bit more criminal to smoke a cigarette.
These are not criminal penalties. These are fines, and it's up for your debate.
Right, I'm just making the point that we are essentially finding people more money for this than the county does for marijuana.
It's a legislative policy decision. So
Yeah, the question is not directed to you, sorry. So
Were you asking me or?
is it directed to my assistant? City
No.
Clerk?
I'm not directing a question, I'm actually just talking. So what I'm saying is another issue I have here with it is we're talking about including lakes. So obviously we have our lakes on 44th Street. We have some of the lakes around, north of 60th Street. I guess who would, because a lot of those are like backyards, single family homes, like somebody sitting in their backyard, potentially adjacent to the lake. I mean, I guess at what point does it become, the actual lake and part of this ordinance, and at what point it's their property?
I think this relates to the lakes on city property, sir. It's park and parkland. I believe the lakes you've identified are private property.
So all the lakes, so which are the public lakes then?
I'm only aware that there is a lake at McDonald Park,
Okay, so this would only
but
apply at
definitely the
McDonald's Park.
director of parks may be in a position to explain what what our facilities are.
Okay, and then the use of the term lighted. So if it's unlit, in that case, what happens?
They're not smoking it. There's no. it's
So
not in
you
use.
can possess a tobacco product in the park as long as you don't light it.
It's not in use, yeah.
Okay,
And a vape.
There's a
Product.
statute actually, excuse me, there's a
Yeah.
statute actually prohibiting minors from possessing tobacco. But it would
public.
only be enforceable by the
Yeah.
state agency.
Mm,
okay. And when you say unfiltered cigars, are there like filtered cigars? I'm a
Yeah.
little confused.
There is.
To be mellows and have no roof on.
If they have like a little white tip, a plastic tip, that's considered a filter on a tobacco.
Okay, so those would be fine. Like you would be. able
Those
to
are, those are part of the list that is not allowed.
Okay,
So the regular, a Cuban cigar, if you've ever seen it, doesn't have any filter, doesn't have any foam, any plastic,
right.
anything as a cigarette would.
So all those cigars are fine. The ones that are violation of this ordinance would be just like a regular cigarette, or like you're saying, the ones with the white.
So the purpose of, if I could just go back to the purpose of the ordinance, the purpose of the ordinance is back to keeping our parks, our youth safe, for finding ways to be role models, for having, I know that we have healthy lungs at play and at a lot of our parks. And this is just a way to solidify that and to be a role model. We have had, I don't know if you have, but I have had a lot of residents reach out to me saying that there is a lot of smoking of different products at our parks and that they find it uncomfortable. There's no regulations. This is a complaint that I have received. I don't know if any other council member has heard of this happening. A lot of teens go out and, gather at the park and do this. So this is a way for us to intervene and to really be a leader in our community and targeting not adults typically, but kids that are 22 and younger and setting a tone of if you're caught doing this, how can we as a city be an example and have something other than a penalty, to help educate the community. We did see that Miami Beach had something similar that they had at their beaches, that they banned
saw that, yeah.
smoking as well. And part of the Florida State statute didn't allow the cigars either. I believe that was more of they pushed it more as for an environmental purpose. We've all been to the beach and, it's very uncomfortable that you're laying out and your toes, as you're rubbing it in the sand, you hit a cigarette butt. So that's pretty nasty. But here, I think that we should take a lead in our parks. And I know that Mr. Sanchez has been an ambassador in this area, and he's happy to see this go through at our locations.
Good evening, everybody. Willie Sanchez, Parks Director, 900 East 56th Street. Well, Hialeah has been a champion tobacco prevention for over 14 years. I know we have the health department and Dr. Richard Theodore online right now, and he can attest to this. But we've been champions in this movement. Hialeah was the pioneer. Casal Munoz, Councilwoman, was part of our team initially. And Council President, thank you for bringing this to the finish line or close to the finish line. But Hialeah inspired Miami Beach, you mentioned. We spoke at 34 different cities during my time here, my initial 24 years of City of Hialeah. Our Tobacco Prevention Summit became the signature event for the state, which we're going to bring back hopefully to a larger scale this year. But this is something that's needed, something that we need to educate. This is an educational campaign. It's not to, like you said, Council President, it's not to force anybody, to penalize anybody, it's to educate. And that's the goal. That's the goal from day one as we started this campaign with the health department, and it has not changed.
Through the chair.
Yes, sir, you're recognized.
Yeah, I think, and I was gonna pretty much say that, Willie, thank you for mentioning that. I think this is a great ordinance. This is a great initiative. Council President, thank you for bringing this forward. You have my support on this. But I think most importantly, it's about what we do after, right? And so if we're lucky enough to have this pass, it's about how is it that we can communicate this to the residents, right? Make sure that they know, and it's implied, right? We don't want our youth to smoke tobacco or whatever the case is. So it's about thinking, what's next after this, right? But I move.
Thank you. And as part of the campaign, we have had discussions with the Florida Health Department about having those visual aids at our parks and being able to educate the community. Hey, this is what we expect at our locations, and there is going to be a penalty or a repercussion if you are caught. Yes.
So.
Okay. Yes.
I just wanted to, because I was having a conversation with a young girl earlier today, as we were giving out some recognitions for the PTSAs. And this young lady, who's part of our EPI program, was mentioning to me how part of their volunteer efforts is to go in and clean up parks, and how many times they find discarded cigarettes, vaping, whatever apparatus, I don't know what all that stuff is, all over the park, and including in the playgrounds that the kids use, And I think if enforcement's is always going to be an issue. Okay, I mean, we've got ordinances on the book where people need to police their pets as they're walking on the street. So how do you enforce that stuff? Okay, it's very difficult, obviously, but I do see it as a tool, perhaps, when police see a bunch of guys loitering, in the swing area or the little slide area of kids, and they're smoking, hey, you got to get out of the park, or a reprimand or a fine or what have you. it is an education process, but I do want you to know that a lot of the volunteer groups that go out and help in our parks to clean up our parks see the residual effects of what people are doing in there that are not using our parks to play pickleball, basketball, or other sports. So, another tool in the toolbox, right? To try to keep our parks as clean as possible and to make sure they're being used for the intended use, which is the enjoyment of all of us, and not having some, fool, trying to do, who knows? And then you go to talk to them, I'm just here smoking a cigarette, I guess. I don't know. It's just another tool. Difficult to enforce, of course it is. But as we educate people, I don't put it past, some of our folks to tell somebody, oh, no se puede fumar en el parque.
Right.
And the next thing you know, o llamo a la policía. I could see that happening, right? So, for what it's worth.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, ma'am, you're recognized.
Back when we were doing, back when we were doing the, we weren't, and I have the file in my office, but we weren't allowed to say you can't smoke in the parks. I remember that. And I don't remember, we came up with Healthy Lungs at Play. So we did we changed it to be positive. So we did a Healthy Lungs at Play smoke-free facility. And we passed that for this building. We passed it for the parking lot. Hialeah Hospital passed it for their parking lot, for their building behind them. And Rafael Aleman was the CEO. And we did it for other parks. And one of the things that we did with elementary schools is we did a 5 foot by 5 foot part in the park, and we had them take out all the buds of they had their gloves on, and they took out all the buds from the cigarettes as soon as they finished, and they would throw them there. And they filled a container of that water, the big water bottles. Each 5 by 5 filled more than that container of all the buds. So that, the kids started realizing, what they were doing, and we were going around the parks. But I don't think we had ever a fine, because I don't think we were allowed to pass an ordinance that said no smoking. So what we would do is tell them you can't smoke at the park, and nobody questions that. When somebody from the parks comes to somebody, and nowadays things are different, and I know that. Nowadays, you tell somebody you can't do that, and they said, who says? What are you going to do? The police? Call them. They don't care. Unfortunately, I'm sorry, but that's reality. But at least doing something that is a betterment for our children and a betterment for their health and our health. I think it's better to do something, and even like the mayor just said, that wasn't enforceable, or we can't enforce it, or we would figure out how to enforce it. But at least they're recognized, and we just say the same thing. There's no smoking in the park. There's no smoking in the park, and put up more of those signs, that it's a healthy park, and you want to be healthy. There is no smoking. But I have a question. You said motion to approve what's your name? Yes.
Yeah.
You said,
Yes, I did.
Jesus, I'm sorry. You said motion, but was it with the fines? Or were we removing the fines, or did we already do that?
So one of the that we were discussing, the first penalty is more of an educational component.
Correct.
And then there is a follow-up. We do get a report. We could hold it quarterly. We could hold it, here at one of our facilities, at one of our parks. And it's not just about, we're dirtying our parks, and it's not just about the environment. It's also about what we put in our bodies. This is very important to me. And I started this a while back, but I have a friend of mine who just passed away. And she's a young lady, and she just passed away of lung cancer. And she left a 5-year-old son, and she left a 3-year-old daughter. She never smoked.
She never smoked.
No, ma'am. She never smoked. Do secondhand smoking. So this is in her name. And for her family, I think it's important that we remember other people that, you don't put this into your body, but you're around it. We have it around our kids. And it kills you.
I agree.
It kills you.
I agree.
And there's someone that right now, there's two kids at home without their mom
Mhm.
who didn't choose to put this in her body. So it's important that we take it and we educate our kids. And we educate them, we tell them what this could do to them. Excuse me, I apologize.
You have a first with the amendment that you said about the education, and that I would do a second, and we'll see how it goes.
Thank you. And I have a second by Councilwoman Casals Munoz.
Ms. Perez,
Yes.
Mr. Tundidor,
Yes.
Mr. Zogby,
Yes.
Mr. Calvo,
Yes.
Ms. Casals Munoz.
Yes.
Motion carries. The item is approved. Second reading and public hearing. Motion is approved as amended. Second reading and public hearing is scheduled for June 13th, 2023.
Thank you. Any unfinished business? No. Any new business? All right, let's move on to our zoning items, please.
Well,
Yeah.
will
I
all
haven't
those
even had it.
persons who will be testifying on an item, please stand and raise your right hand.
Las personas que quisieran prestar sus opiniones delante de esta junta, por favor pónganse de pie y alcen la mano derecha.
Do you swear or affirm that the evidence you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God, if so say I do.
¿Usted jura o afirma que el testimonio que va a dar será la verdad, toda la verdad y únicamente la verdad y que Dios sea su testigo? Por favor diga que sí si la respuesta es afirmativa.
Let the record reflect that all have responded in the affirmative.
En el archivo público constará que todos han respondido afirmativamente.
If they didn't raise their hand, so you're gonna have to do it every time they come over.
So everyone that was going to speak on an item stood and did the swearing in. We're gonna move on to PZ1. It's on second reading.
Second reading and public hearing of proposed ordinance granting a variance permit to allow 13 parking spaces where 26 parking spaces are required to open a new tapas and wine restaurant on the second floor of an existing commercial building operating a liquor store. Contrary to Hialeah Code of Ordinances, section 98-2189, subsection 4F. Property located at 400 East 41st Street, Hialeah, Zone C2, Liberal Retail Commercial District. Repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing penalties for violation hereof, providing for a severability clause, providing for an effective date.
Thank you. This item is on second reading and public hearing. Do we have anyone in council chambers or online that would like to speak on behalf of this item?
Hello, good evening. I do not
Ella
speak
traduce.
English.
Ella te va a traducir. So, si puedes, habla un poco con despacio y ella entonces te va a traducir las 2 o 3 oraciones a la vez.
Vale, mi familia es la propietaria del
My family is the property owner
building.
Su
of the
nombre,
building.
su primer nombre, su apellido y la dirección.
Mi nombre
Primero.
es Raúl Rodríguez.
Raúl
La
Rodríguez,
dirección es 400 East,
400 East 41st Street.
Adelante.
Ahí construimos un edificio. Esa esquina estaba muy fea antes en Hialeah,
We had a building owned. It was very ugly in the beginning.
el cual nos quedó muy bonito, pero en un principio se pensó
In the
segunda
beginning, it was
planta,
very ugly and we have remodeled
que iba a ser el almacén del liquor store.
that it was going to be the location of the liquor store.
Con el tiempo nos dimos que no era práctico el
With-
almacén en la segunda planta,
With time, we realized it was not going to be practical and it was going to be in the second floor.
lo cual construimos un estoraje al lado, en la parcela de al lado.
Either way, we built a storage in the side.
No tenemos ahora, tenemos la segunda planta deshabitada, no hay nada ahí en la segunda planta.
We have the second floor vacant and with nothing in it.
Y entonces hemos pensado instalar ahí un restaurante de comida gourmet,
We have thought of making a restaurant of gourmet food.
pequeño,
Spa.
solo serán 30 sillas.
It will only be 30 seats.
Nos hemos fijado que los que vienen al liquor store están muy poco tiempo porque cogen la botella, son 10 minutos.
We have
se van.
noticed that the people who arrive to our liquor store are there for only a short period of time. They grab their bottle and they leave.
por lo cual los parqueos que tiene actualmente el liquor store le sobran.
with the parking spaces that the liquor store has at the moment.
Además, la cantidad de personas que asisten al liquor store es de 4 de la tarde a 6 de la tarde. que
Either
cuando
way, the
terminas de
people that
trabajar,
attend the liquor store are from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m.
y queríamos abrir ese restaurante sobre las 6 de la tarde.
And we would like to open the restaurant as of 6 p.m.
El liquor store tiene drive-thru, lo cual
The liquor store does have drive-through.
el 60% de la gente que va a nuestro licor va por el drive-thru.
60% of our customers come through the drive-through.
En Hialeah no hay ningún restaurante que sea gourmet, que tenga comida de diseño, o sea,
In
platos de
Hialeah, there's no restaurant that has gourmet food with design food.
y teníamos esa idea.
And we had this idea.
El restaurante
The restaurant
va a tener acceso independiente al liquor store.
will have access independent from the liquor store.
El ascensor sube
The elevator goes
directamente a
up.
la segunda planta y tiene una escalera que también va por atrás.
The location has an elevator that goes to the second floor and has a private entrance to the back.
Okay. Y el drive-thru también va a servir comida. Son dos diferentes.
That will be an
store y lo
independent
otro va a ser
business.
restaurante.
Muy bien. Okay. Okay, do we have any other questions on the item?
I do not. I
Say
like the idea.
motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Zogby.
Second.
I have a second by Councilwoman Casals Munoz. Can we please call the roll?
Mr. Tumidor has stepped away. Mr. Zogby,
Yes.
Mr. Calvo,
Yes.
Ms. Casal Munoz.
Yes.
Ms. Perez.
Yes,
Motion carries. The item is approved.
thank you.
Gracias.
Felicidades.
Gracias.
Through the chair.
Thank
Yes,
you.
you're recognized.
Chica, ¿usted mismo va a hacer el restaurante o lo va a rentar a otra persona?
Lo vamos a rentar a unos chicos jóvenes porque estoy
We
muy
will,
viejo.
we will be renting it to some young men.
Y dice que va a coger el vino de España, ¿verdad?
Claro, claro.
Y los quesos de España.
Tapas españolas, de
It
hecho,
will be Spain tapas,
Tapas de España.
jamones, queso, todo.
Qué rico.
ham, cheese.
A ver si nos ganamos la estrella Michelin.
Ah, sí, sí. Bueno, ya tenemos un restaurante francés, ahora
Sí.
necesitamos otro español.
Español,
So,
pues muy bien.
a las estrellas.
Están todos invitados.
Ay, muchas
You're all
gracias.
invited.
Feliz. Vamos a estar ahí. Okay. PZ2 is, we're postponing it to June 13th. PZ3 is also postponed to June 13th. We're moving on to PZ4.
First reading of proposed ordinance granting a variance permit to allow the expansion of a non-conforming use by allowing a 125% building footprint increase of an existing duplex approved in 1948. Approve of a front setback of 17.67 feet where 25 feet are required. Allow rear setback of 20 feet where 25 feet are required, and allow lot coverage of 31.3% where 30% is the maximum allowed, subject to the condition that the property will be platted before the issuance of the certificate of occupancy, and that the applicant will be responsible for the infrastructure upgrade that might be required for the proposed building expansion. All contrary to Hialeah Code of Ordinances, sections 98-545, 98-547, and 98-2056, subsection B2. Property located at 501 East 59th Street, Hialeah, zoned R1, one family district. Repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing penalties for violation hereof, providing for a severability clause, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you. I think we want to call Mr. De La Paz.
I would rather not be.
They were about to skip you, but see, I defended you. Let's go. No, no.
My
Welcome.
name is Frank De La Paz, 9361 Bell Road, Miami, Florida. 33165.
Thank you.
And please remove from table.
Okay, I was asking through the chair. because-
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
I just wanted to make sure that all the documentation that Deborah required is Deborah received.
Ms. George?
Oh,
Wait.
Just tell me out loud.
What happened last time is that we were discussing if he needs to replat or he needs, so we did a research with the law department and yes, he needs to replat.
He needs to what?
To replat the.
Okay.
So this is approved with the condition that the property gets replat.
Okay, so we're removing it. Oh, so we don't have to remove it from table because this is a different.
It says
Okay,
subject to
okay.
condition that the property will be
And
platted
that was my
before.
recommendation prior, that he had to replat.
So motion to remove from table?
Second.
Right? We have a motion by Councilwoman Gonzalez Munoz. We have a second by Councilmember Zogby.
Mr. Tumidor is away. Mr. Zogby,
Yes.
Mr. Calvo,
Yes.
Ms. Casals Munoz.
Yes.
Ms. Perez.
Yes.
Motion carries. The item is removed from table.
Okay, ma'am, I don't mind the replat. I really don't. What I do mind is not being able, which I have been able now, to continue the process of getting the plans approved. In the past, we have approved things subject to replat within time frame. So I don't mind the replat as long as I'm allowed to continue to finish my building permit review and move on with the project. Definitely, we're gonna finish before the replat is done. But in the past, we have allowed a temporary waiver of plat of 2 years. So while the process is going on, and I don't see why that cannot be the case on this. So.
Deborah, through the chair, I'm sorry.
Yes,
Sorry.
ma'am.
Deborah?
Waiver of plat is a variance and he didn't apply for that. My suggestion is that he proffers the declaration of restrictions, that he will plat within a certain amount of time and that's it. And
Perfect,
there's
done.
I do proffer that and, you know,
Excellent.
I do hope.
So by
that-
the end of the evening, thank you.
And
Motion to approve with the conditions that he will.
And second.
We already took a vote.
No, she's motioning to approve, no?
We. Did you already take roll on this?
No, that was to remove from plat.
From the
I mean,
table.
remove from
The
from
table. So we're motioning to
Thank you, Carl.
approve
We're motioning to approve
With
with the proffer that he is going to.
with the conditions. Yes, all right. Do I have a motion by Councilwoman Gonzalez Munoz and I
Yes.
have a second by Councilman Zogby. Can we please call the roll?
Mr. Tumidor is still away. Mr. Zogby,
Yes.
Mr. Calvo,
Yes.
Ms. Casals Munoz.
Yes.
Ms. Perez.
Yes.
Motion carries.
You
The
need a
item is.
second?
Thank you.
Motion carries. The item is approved. Second reading and public hearing is scheduled for May
Is that
twenty-third,
when you were talking?
2023.
Thank you.
Thank you, Frank.
All right. Thank you. We're moving on to LU 1.
First reading of proposed ordinance amending the future land use map from low density residential to transit oriented development district. Property is located at 901 East 27th Street, 921 East 27th Street, 931 East 27th Street, 941 East 27th Street, 951 East 27th Street, 957 East 27th Street, 967 East 27th Street, 971 East 27th Street, 981 East 27th Street, 991 East 27th Street, 902 East 28th Street, 912 East 28th Street, 922 East 28th Street, 932 East 28th Street, 952 East 28th Street, 962 East 28th Street, 972 East 28th Street, 982 East 28th Street, 992 East 28th Street, and 2740 East 10th Avenue. Hialeah zoned R1, one family district, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing penalties for violation hereof, providing for a severability clause, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you so much. Good evening, sir. You're recognized.
Yes, good evening, council members. Carlos Diaz with offices at 333 Southeast Second Avenue, here on behalf of the applicant. We have made a quick presentation for you, so we can just go through that. So we have two applications today for this property. One is the land use amendment and the other one is the rezoning. We're very excited to show you this project, which is within the Hialeah Transfer Station TOD area. We're just the block north of the Metro Park 2 project, which this council recently approved. We have all of the properties on that block except one lot. So I don't know if we can go to the next slide on the presentation. Yeah, so you can see there in green, that's the property that we're looking at now.
Mhm.
As I mentioned, we have all the lots in that one block, in that block except one. So as all the other TOD projects, we have two applications, the land use amendment. If you can go to the next slide, I think we can see that map. So we're just asking to extend that boundary north to include the block. And then we have the rezoning, which is the next application. And if you can go to the next slide. Here you can see a rendering of the project will look like. This is, as I mentioned, more for the rezoning application. Go to the next slide. Yeah, this is perfect. So can you go back to more previous one? So as you all know, there's a lot of development going on in this area. We have the Metro Rail station and the Tri-Rail station, but I think more importantly, we do have an important employment center here, which is Hialeah Hospital and the surrounding healthcare uses there. So we're seeing a lot of interest in people who work in this area who want to live close to where they work to avoid long commutes. And we're very excited to provide these projects for the city, and we look forward to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you so much. Do we have any questions on the item?
Motion to approve.
Through the chair.
Yes, you're recognized, sir.
Well, buzzer beater. Yeah, so obviously we just approved Metro Park, the second, and I guess my global concern is, and I guess this is not directed so much as to you, but to my colleagues, is the policy of this council going to be that we're going to keep sort of turning these single family neighborhoods into these TOD projects whilst at the same time ignoring the industrial corridor, which was in the TOD plan kind of outlined as the area that would become the TOD. In essence, we're removing the single family, we're building these beautiful buildings, but the industrial remains. And I think part of the reason is that the acquisition cost of these industrial parcels is extremely high compared to these single family homes, which although the owner is getting a great deal, in terms of aesthetic for the future of the city, we're going to have an area where we have these beautiful buildings, but next to it, you still have the chop shop, right? And all these other sort of industrial uses. And I guess from my point of view, my concern is you would have to walk through that industrial corridor in order to get to the actual station, which is kind of like the whole point of TOD.
Can I say something?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's coming. You have to be patient. The industrial is coming. I cannot say, but it's coming. And also, we have some other things in mind, like some kind of parking management, because the problem with that industrial is that they park and tandem park and they use the street as if they were theirs. So we are working also on a strategy to avoid all that parking. So be patient that it's coming.
Yeah, I guess my only concern is for whatever reason it doesn't come.
Well, I cannot tell you where and when, but I know that there is something already happening there. But I cannot tell you because I don't know the address, but I know that something is working on a deal that will happen very soon.
Yeah.
And I think what happens is, as you mentioned, though, it's the price is a little bit higher. It's also the ability to assemble the slots. You can, it's easier to get somebody who wants a single family lot you can assemble all of them, buy them all at once. These industrial uses, the property owners have, it's kind of like more mismatched. So you don't have somebody that owns all of the properties that you can easily buy it from them. And you can see there's some industrials that have been approved, like Metro Station there at 1145 East 24th Street. It's kind of like more piecemeal than the other.
Because this area specifically, actually almost a year ago, we organized a cleanup in this area, and like the industrial area is like pretty run down, pretty bad. But the larger concern is, right, the idea is you have to walk through this area. If you buy into the whole TOD model, which I do, you have to walk through this area in order to get to the actual station. So it's not like you can just kind of ignore the eyesore. Yeah, so that's just kind of my concern, because it seems like we're going to keep doing this. We kind of did a block, more than past 25th Street, and then now we're like by 28th Street, and we're still doing it over the single family area side.
How, if I may, just to run on his thought, How far is this East 10th Avenue to that Tri-Rail station area? How far? It's just like one block,
It's
right?
just one block and there's a block that connects through.
Okay.
Which is, I think your point, you have to go through those properties.
Right.
And I think.
Is there,
There's
is,
no sidewalk there, if I remember.
is
correctly.
there,
My next point.
maybe this is something that you're open to. Is there any kind of commitment that we could get some kind of walkable pathway built from
Yeah.
there?
It-
Is there something
that
that
was
you
gonna
could
be my
offer us?
next point. So I think we can definitely, so what happens a lot of times in these projects, you get it approved and then you go through the approval process and we have to, work with Public Works and the Streets Department. And what ends up happening a lot of times, you have to make infrastructure improvements, right? You have to install a new water main, because the water mains that are there are for like single family homes and not for larger developments. And that triggers you redoing the streets kind of in the surrounding areas. So a lot of times I think the city is using this as an opportunity to make sure that you redo that street and you make it more not only friendly for pedestrians, but maybe put on street parking so people can just like leave their cars in the middle of the street, or you can't have an unusable car. So I mean, that's something we definitely look into with the Public Works Department and the Streets Department.
And if we could get that, I think that'd be fantastic, just either on East 26th Street or on East 27th, so it's in between, more in the middle. And it could cross right through from that East 10th Avenue going straight across to East 27th Street, reaching the Tri-Rail building. If we could build some kind of walkable path, we could commit to something like that.
And like I said, there's a lot of development going on here, so it's a matter of how do we, make it, sit everybody in the same room and make it happen. So
Yeah,
I think it's definitely doable, because I think it's 27th Street that connects.
I think,
27th.
Right to and there's an
Yeah.
entrance right there to the station.
Right. It's the main hub area.
I think Metro Park is definitely, the player in this area for now, right? So, the onus really is on you guys, and I'm sure, hopefully you can keep expanding in the area. But as one person that's, kind of gone over the original TOD plan, I think it was 2015 or whatever. I think the plan originally was for the greatest density, at least, to be in the industrial, and sort of tapering off as we got to the residential, but we're doing the inverse, which, we're gonna experience some growing pains as a cause to that. I just want to make sure everybody's kind of aware of that issue. That's all. Motion.
I second.
Okay. Yes, there was a motion by Councilwoman Casals Munoz, and there's a second by Councilman Alcavo.
Mr. Zogby,
Yes.
Mr. Calvo,
Yes.
Ms. Casals Munoz, Ms. Perez,
Yes.
Mr. Tondidon. Motion carries. The item is approved. Second reading and public hearing is scheduled for May 23, 2023.
Thank you.
Sorry, Councilwoman, may I record Councilman Tondidon's vote for PZ one?
Yes, Councilman.
He stepped-
Oh,
he
he's
stepped
he's
away.
stepped away. All right, so we're on PZ 5.
First reading of proposed ordinance rezoning properties from R1, one family district to the transit oriented development district. Properties located at 901 East 27th Street, 921 East 27th Street, 931 East 27th Street, 941 East 27th Street, 951 East 27th Street, 957 East 27th Street, 967 East 27th Street, 971 East 27th Street, 981 East 27th Street, 991 East 27th Street, 902 East 28th Street, 912 East 28th Street, 922 East 28th Street, 932 East 28th Street, 952 East 28th Street, 962 East 28th Street, 972 East 28th Street, 982 East 28th Street, 992 East 28th Street, and 2740 East 10th Avenue. Hialeah zoned R1, one family district, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing penalties for violation hereof, providing for a severability clause, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you so much. So PZ 5 is on first reading.
PZ 6.
PZ 5, sir. We just did LU 1 and then now we're
There
doing
you go.
PZ 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Motion to, I
So
second
I
the
have a
motion.
first by Councilwoman Casals Munoz and I have a second by Councilmember Zogby.
Mr. Calvo,
Yes.
Ms. Casals Munoz, Ms. Perez.
Yes.
Mr. Tondidon. Mr. Zogby.
Yes.
Motion carries. The item is approved. Second reading and public hearing is scheduled for May 23, 2023.
Thank you. Councilman,
Councilman, may I record your vote for PZ one? And for PZ four? Okay, thank you.
all right, we're moving on to LU two, please.
First reading of proposed ordinance amending the future land use map from low-density residential and high-density residential to transit-oriented development district. Properties located at 965 East 24th Street, 975 East 24th Street, 9811 East 24th Street, 991 East 24th Street, 997 East 24th Street, Hialeah zoned R1, one family district, and R34, multiple family district. Repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing penalties for violation hereof, providing for a severability clause, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you. This item is also on first reading.
Right, Carlos Diaz with offices at 333 Southeast Second Avenue, here on behalf of the applicant. This application, like the one, it's in the same area, so also about a block away from the Hialeah Metro transfer station. If you go to the next slide, you can see so here it's a property in green. So we're right on the south side of East 25th Street, right across the street from Metro Park. So we see this as a great opportunity to kind of like one of those gateway projects to the TOD district here. We have that southwest corner of East 10th Avenue and 25th Street. Here, these property for the land use application is only the lots on East 25th Street. If you can go to this next slide, because on 24th Street, because on 25th Street, we already have the TOD designation. So there's only the lots in the back, and then the rezoning does cover the entire property. So on this project, like in the previous one, we're not seeking any parking reductions. We're complying with all the parking. Here, we are requesting a variance to go to 10 stories, which is the same height that Metro Park has, just to keep that cohesiveness between the project. And we have the same. We've coordinated the streetscape, right? So we have 20-foot sidewalks on both. So we want to create 25th Street will be like a boulevard type road when you're coming in the TOD district. So we're coordinated so they look the same on both sides of the street. And that any questions you all may have.
And what's subject to this property? It's going to be commercial?
Yeah, so if you can go to the next slide, I think it's also a mixed use development. I'm sorry, we have 347 residential units here. And here we have a lot more that's the existing condition now. You have that parking that backs out directly into 25th Street. And if you can go to the next slide, I think you can see the project there. So here it is. And then here we have about 15,000 square feet of ground floor retail. Again, because we're right on 25th Street. So we know there's going to be a demand for retail here that there wasn't as much of in the other project, which is a little further inland, so to speak.
Have any input on the property?
Motion.
Any input on the application? I have a motion from Councilman Calvo, and I have a second by Councilman Dogby.
Yes.
Ms. Casal Munoz? Ms. Perez?
Yes.
Mr. Tundidor? Mr. Zogby?
Yes.
Mr. Calvo?
Yes.
Motion carries. The item is approved. Second reading and public hearing is scheduled for May 23rd, 2023.
Thank you.
All right, we're moving on to PZ 6.
First reading of proposed ordinance rezoning properties from R1, one family district to R34, multiple family district, and C1 restricted retail commercial district to transit oriented development district. Allow a variance permit to allow a maximum building height of 10 stories where 8 stories is the maximum allowed. Contrary to Hialeah Code of Ordinance, section 98-1544, subsection C2. Properties located at 965 East 24th Street, 975 East 24th Street, 981 East 24th Street, 991 East 24th Street, 997 East 24th Street, 934 East 25th Street, and 954 East 25th Street. Hialeah zones R1, one family district, R34, multiple family district, and C1 restricted retail commercial district. Repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing penalties for violation hereof, providing for a severability clause, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you so much. This item is on first reading. Do I have any discussion from the council on this item? I have a motion by Councilwoman Casals Munoz,
Second.
and I have a second by Councilmember Zogby.
Ms. Perez,
Yes.
Mr. Dundidor, Mr. Zogby,
Yes.
Mr. Calvo,
Yes.
Ms. Casals Munoz. Motion carries. The item is approved. Second reading and public hearing is scheduled for May 23rd, 2023.
Right,
Thank you
thank
so
you all very
much.
much.
Thank you. Have a good night. We're on to item PZ 7.
First reading of proposed ordinance rezoning 390 East 43rd Street from R1, one family district to P parking for the construction of a new parking lot to serve the existing restaurant located at 4290 East 4th Avenue and rezoning of property with folio number 04-3106-009-0040 from R1, one family district to C1 restricted retail commercial district to make the zoning consistent with the existing land use, allow a variance permit to allow 27 parking spaces where 38 parking spaces are required, related to the proposed expansion of the existing restaurant. Contract to Hialeah Code of Ordinance, Section 98-2189, subsection 10A. Properties located at 390 East 43rd Street and 4290 East 4th Avenue, and folio number 04-3106-009-0040. Hialeah zoned R1, one family district, and C1 restricted retail commercial district. Repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing penalties for violation hereof, providing for a severability clause, and providing for an effective date.
Hi, good evening.
Hi, good evening. My name is John Lucas. Pardon me, I have a hoarse throat this evening. I'm here on behalf of the applicant. Address is 2655 South Lejeune Road, Coral Gables, Florida, 33134. Assisting me this evening is Maria Fernandez, the architect of record, who has provided conceptual drawings of something that has been very much improved from what had been presented last year. The entire year has passed, and as I've stated earlier, you know what a difference a year makes. So what we have done is improved upon this. We have appeared before P&Z, and we have attempted to reach out to the neighbors to address many of the concerns, actually all the concerns that were expressed during the P&Z board meetings. The owners declined to meet, but nevertheless, during our last meeting with P&Z, we attempted to collaborate and to reach certain conditions that actually spoke to the specific objections of the neighbors. What we wanted to do is to have this particular project be something that would be more complementary to the neighborhood as opposed to imposing any impacts or imposing anything that might rise to the level of impairment of the quiet enjoyment of their property, if you will. I don't know if the council has in fact received a copy of our proposed or proffered declaration of restrictions. If you have not, I'm prepared to go through those. Would you like for me to, Madam Chairperson?
We have the recommendations from the Planning and Zoning Board. Yes.
Okay. Do you also
It's
have the
about-
proffered restrictions?
Do you have it?
I have it here. I
Yeah.
have it here in paper. I'm happy to read it into the record and present it to you,
I don't know
whatever
if
you
we didn't
wish.
Receive this. If we can have, Melissa, can you maybe make us a copy?
May I approach? There you go. Thank you. I think it's important that we take a look at those restrictions themselves because it represents, you're welcome, it represents an earnest effort on the part of the business owner to address the concerns that have been expressed by each and every of the neighbors. We proffered those, we stand by those, and they are part and parcel to the application process itself. Do we want to take a moment and stand down until we get a copy for members of council, or do you wish to pose any questions?
What's the pleasure of the board?
Understood. You bet.
In the backup, I don't see a present photo, no? No.
Through the chair. No, I don't see him in the backup either. I see him on the
No.
agenda.
I see it on the agenda, I just don't see it in the
Because
backup.
this is first reading, he will, after this meeting and whatever you decide, he will get in touch with the law department and they will proffer a declaration of restriction with all those limitations that he will read into the records and were the ones that we were gathering after the neighbor spoke in the meeting and all that. So before the second reading, you will have that declaration of restriction with what he will explain now.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I think they went to make copies of it. So
Mhm.
as he's explaining it, we could see it before he continues with the presentation, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Agreed. Thank you.
Mhm.
Maybe while we're waiting, I can describe the project for briefly. My name is Maria Fernandez from Moino Fernandez Architects, and the address is 15552 Southwest 15th Street, Weston. The project is a dynamic project, but it's at the same time a simple one. We're only adding about 2,000 square feet of new construction, divided mainly between two buildings. The building on the southeast corner is a two-story building that has about 1,000 square feet, well, 1,100, about 550 on each floor. And the purpose of this building is only for storage. Storage was a main issue about a year ago with the project. So that's why we have this building only for the storage, for the cooler freezer, for the restaurant, and anything else. Then the other one-story building, it's only for food preparation. It's an extension of the existing kitchen. The third function that we have on the project is the drive-through, which the drive-through will help because of the shortage that we have on parking. And then the fourth item is 2 gazebos for some outdoor seating. And we stress a lot of landscaping as a buffer for the gazebos. And then there were some issues with some of the neighbors about a year ago and recently. And those restrictions that Mr. Lucas is going to read to you guys are all the restrictions that the owner had agreed upon to help the neighbors. You have any questions?
Yes, ma'am, you recognize.
Thank you. You were saying, since you were describing the building, what I'm assuming is the building that has the glass in the front of it, in the back, is the two-story building you're speaking of? Okay, so that one, if you look at it, I'm assuming that it would be on the west side. That's part of the parking?
And this is the proposed food preparation. I don't know if you guys have the package, if you have the site plan or that would be, you have. So this is the food preparation building to get this thing right. Again, this is the storage, this is the parking, and here is the drive-through.
So where the parking is, where the two-story building is, where that parking is, that is the property that was purchased? The property that was purchased? So that building, that's the two-story building. If you look at the east of that building, where there's trees there, which I know that's west, east, correct. I know those trees aren't there now, but what's there now?
That's the
Building next door. So the property that was purchased, that there was a house that doesn't exist anymore, goes all the way to the back. So it was longer than the building, it was longer than the lot that was on East Fourth Avenue, in other words?
There was an alley there. So the applicant came a couple of years ago, they closed the alley and that property was the land use was changed to commercial and it was never rezoned. So now he's coming to rezone the property and that is where the storage building is. So the lot ends here, that is extends a little bit here because that one part of the alley.
Okay,
And the trees that are there behind that second-story building are what? No, behind that two-story
no, on the
storage.
east, where I was showing you originally. by East
Look,
Fourth Avenue.
If you look at this picture, it's better, ma'am. This photo right here, look over here, this way. That, you see all those all those trees back there?
Those trees don't exist. That's
What-
just for showing.
What's that property? That's a commercial property.
Right, correct.
But those trees are there now or no?
No,
No,
no.
right.
Okay, that's what I wanted to see, but you're covering, so.
And then he's building with in that building in front of the red car. And the one that's right there, that one and the lower one.
Okay, you keep doing, I'm sorry, I can't see. I apologize. Okay, so my question is existing parking lot that's there now. It's gonna be removed for a drive-through
And two buildings. And
and
that
a food
building,
preparation building.
and that building on the bottom, right? So now it's becoming a building.
And that is that on the original property or is that on the? Got it. It was an alley. Okay. So is that alley behind the commercial property that's on East Fourth Avenue there where the trees are looking very pretty, but that's a commercial property? No.
Where the
East,
trees are, no.
yes. No, I know it's not. What my question is, Deborah? It's a commercial property. Right. Trust me, I get it. I get it. I've been there plenty of times. So that property, that's a commercial property. Behind it, it had an alley. So the alley was, who got that alley? That alley is supposed to be 50-50 back and forth. So who got that alley? He acquired the half. Okay, so that commercial property is fine with him having that property because I'm seeing it and it's in between two properties. So it was. Okay, perfect. So then we got the parking that was the original building. The parking lot, we are using it as a drive-through. And then we have the parking in the back. How many parking spaces do we have? Okay. And by the size, 27 parking spots. Of course. And for the size of the building, what do we need? What parking lot do we need? Or what parking space do we need for the building? They're asking for a variance for the 20s, for the difference. Okay. Okay, so let's look at the restricted covenants,
And over here,
the declaration, I'm sorry.
and on this side of the property, what's on this side of the property?
East,
No, this is the east. What's on, yeah, the west side. No, the residential. Is there a residential home right there?
that's a
Yeah,
home.
that's isn't that the south side? No,
It
No.
would be the east side. So
no,
the,
right there. Okay,
Where the red car is north.
so
right. Yeah, so it's south. There you go. Yeah. Right.
Now you just like messed me up. I was completely fine the other way.
The west side. Got it. Yeah. All right.
So the subject property is located at the southwest corner of 43rd, East 43rd Street and East 4th Avenue.
Correct.
As we proceed to the west, it would go from East 4th Avenue all the way to the west. And the western boundary line would be the boundary line between this property and the parking lot that is being proposed and the residential neighborhood itself.
Correct.
The owner, as we had represented and provided to the Planning and Zoning Board, immediately to the west of the property has no objection to the project itself. And as part of the restrictions, as I go through them, you'll see that there is at least one of the requirements here is that there will be an 8-foot wall separating the parking lot from the adjacent and contiguous property. Also further buffered by landscaping on the inside of that wall, which would be on the parking lot side. With Madam Chairman, with your permission, may I go through the proffered restrictions that were the source of discussion and collaboration between the Planning and Zoning Board and the applicant at the time?
Yeah,
Through the
I
chair?
just wanted a little bit of clarity. The property across the street, the 351 that was being used as, I believe it was a purchase property from what I recall. Correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm misspeaking. I apologize, but I thought it was used. There was complaints from the neighborhood saying that it was used as a storage. Does the owner still, is he still using that property across the street for this purpose?
The owner still owns the property. It is not being used in connection with
The restaurant?
this restaurant operation. And we
Okay.
understand from last year, at least I understand from last year in reading the record, that that was a point of contention that needed to be addressed. So it has not been and is not being used.
And
in
that's his
connection.
primary source, that's his primary home, it's his
No,
homestead?
it's not.
No.
Yeah, that it's a leased property. It's not a
Oh, okay.
owner occupied, so to speak.
Okay. And it's not being used then for food, for
It is not.
storage, it's not for dishwashing? I know that that was one of the,
Yes, ma'am.
okay. All right.
So
Through the chair?
Yes,
when
ma'am.
you walk-
Before
Your
you,
recognition.
you were speaking of the wall, you said you were doing landscaping on the
West.
east part of the wall by the parking lot. And on the west side of the wall, are you doing any feature or anything? It's just gonna be a plain wall.
Yes,
Okay.
that was not, yes, ma'am.
That's
Okay.
not your property, correct?
Okay, and that was specifically item number 7 of the roughly 9 topics that we discussed in
Okay.
planning and zoning. Very first one was having to do with signage. Because of the traffic generation at this particular location and specifically this corner, 43rd Street and 4th Avenue, you see a lot of traffic being generated at that location. What we did was one of the requirements that was being imposed by staff in its approval of the conceptual plan was there has to be absolute strict compliance with the signage as required by the streets division. That was a absolute. I mean, there was nothing that we're going to argue about in that regard. So obviously that's something we agreed to and represented to the Planning and Zoning Board in their consideration. Please consider that to be done because that is something that the owner would absolutely agree to. We then started discussing some of the other objections that were being raised by the neighbors themselves. One was, how do you adjust or deal with traffic congestion, specifically in a through right of way? So 43rd Street may be a through right of way. We have no police function at all, no law enforcement abilities. But what we do have is the ability to control the ingress and egress on site, off site, and also to facilitate whatever, excuse me, whatever on-site circulation we may need if and when that need arises. So one of the proffers was, we're going to make sure that we always have an official person on site who's going to be able to facilitate traffic getting on and off the site, as well as any on-site circulation we may have. Now, forgive me, that could be complicated. And one of the concepts or concerns that were expressed was, well, what about deliveries? Is there any way that you can limit your deliveries? Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you very much. One of the concepts was, as we discussed on-site circulation and ingress and egress was, what about deliveries? You're going to have those food service deliveries. Is there any way that we can limit the deliveries to the front portion, or I should say the easternmost portion of the parent track, which would be the driveway leading to the parking area at the immediate southwest corner of 4th Avenue and 43rd Street, which would be that front little parking area. Problem is that driveway is way too close to the intersection and the corner radius there and would create an even further impediment to traffic. So we discussed having the deliveries actually to the middle of the property once it's completed. But then the question was, well, if you're going to do that, how can we better control deliveries? If you take a look at our item number 3, we went ahead and researched it and said, you know what, we can actually do deliveries on site during the off-peak hours between 8:30 in the morning and noon. And that's it. So you're gonna have a short window in order to take deliveries to the site itself. At 8:30 in the morning, it's after, well, hopefully after everybody wakes up, after the school kids and mom and dad are going through that area, you're not going to be listening to the beep, beep, beep or the reverse of the major trucks, et cetera. So we thought it would be very reasonable for us to go ahead and limit deliveries from 8:30 to 12, Monday through Friday, with no deliveries whatsoever on weekends, when you might expect there might be other traffic throughout the neighborhood. There was also an issue regarding the aesthetics, if you will, of the site itself, given the fact that you have a gazebo area outside, or you have patrons that might be sitting at a picnic table and having lunch. It was unsightly to have open open garbage receptacles anywhere nearby. So one of the proffers was, you know what, we'll get the commercial grade garbage cans. We'll go ahead and put those out. That was actually proffered, and it has been done since we last spoke. When we get to item number 5, there was also complaints because over the course of the last year, there were what appeared to be sidewalk vendors, fruit vendors, food vendors that were selling their products out of boxes right there. That again was something that the neighbors complained about. We have made a proffer as well. That'll never happen again. It's not happening, and it hasn't happened since that proffer had been made. That's another restriction, which will be part of the declaration of restrictions that ultimately would be proffered. When you're dealing with a parking lot such as ours, another issue that was raised was one of how do you prevent your parking lot during the off hours when you close from actually being a hangout place, you know? So what do you do? What we did when we proffered item number 6 was that we indicated that all the parking lots would be closed after business hours with a chain restraint, a fence, or the like, in order to deter and or prevent entry onto the parking area after hours. We already spoke about the wall separating the subject property from the adjacent contiguous westernmost neighborhood. There'll be an 8-foot wall with obviously buffering of landscaping, which we have proffered would be provided on the inside as well. Item number 8, there were complaints from the neighbors about cleaning pots and pans and working after hours outside, particularly utilizing pressure cleaners and the like. One of the members of the board said, you know what, pressure cleaners in the evening hours can be very disconcerting to neighbors. What can you do to quiet it? Somebody suggested you should go out and buy yourself some electric pressure cleaners. That's exactly what Mr. Largo did. There have been no gas pressure cleaners. He's purchased those, and that's what he's been using ever since we went to the board, and trying to make it a little bit more quiet in terms of the operation, control it more for the quiet enjoyment of the neighborhood itself. And then with regard to the cleanliness outside, one of the neighbors actually mentioned, you know, over at the McDonald's, which is directly across the street, they always have somebody who's walking around with a sweeper, a pan of some sort, and they're picking up all the debris that, you know, the patrons leave there. So we have said that's not an issue. We can have personnel that will be a little bit more attentive to the cleanliness of the exterior of the property as well. Those were the 9 proffers that were made, and they weren't just pulled out of the air. This was at second reading, or the second hearing we had with P&Z. And I have to tell you, it was at the first hearing that we had with the Planning and Zoning Board that the neighbors came out and vociferously objected and raised each of those issues that I just addressed. And the question I had was, how is it that we can coexist? What can we do in order to make our property more viable, more acceptable to a neighborhood itself, as opposed to intrude unnecessarily upon your quiet enjoyment? So went back through the record, watched the videos, listened to the complaints themselves, and researched the type of response that an owner should have when trying to collaborate and otherwise coordinate with adjacent owners. Those are the restrictions that we had. This is an earnest effort on the part of the owner to try to make a project that was conceptualized last year and even prior to that, even better, with a series of restrictions that carry with them penalties, revocations, daily fines, enforcement actions themselves, whether it's injunctive relief or what have you. We discussed those, we articulated those at the last hearing, and we stand by all the representations made. And we would urge your favorable consideration of this project.
I would just like to state on the record that we did receive some letters from different members and residents from the community. I just want to double check that every council member has received the concerns. I know this item is on first reading, and we typically allow for comments on this on second reading, but I do want to, consider that we have, I believe, 4 or 5 different emails. I just want to make sure everybody received them.
No, Chair.
Yes, you're recognized.
Well, let me just start here. So obviously you highlighted these 9 concessions or conditions or what have you. You said you just viewed the tapes from when it was sort of debated last year, so maybe it's more recent in your brain than in mine, but I remember part of the conversation was on the current conditions of the building and what that could mean once these conditions were adopted as to whether they would be really followed by the property owner. So I guess my question was, in this year, right, that since it was denied, which of these 9, if any, the property owner has already proactively, without any requirement to do so, but proactively has done?
Everyone except for item number 1, which is obviously the requirements of the street division.
Like, for example, does he have?
Who is watching traffic on site? And remember, we're dealing with a site that is not yet improved as it is being depicted on these illustrations here. So parking is on site today is not a problem, but yes, the answer is there is somebody who is employed there, who works there, and it's any one of the employees who is assigned the task or the responsibility of having to deal with traffic congestion to the extent that exists.
Right. And then in terms of, like, for example, like illegal parking, like currently occurring?
I beg your pardon?
Like illegal parking on site currently?
That's my knowledge, no, sir.
Because I'm on like Google Images right now. I'm looking at the property and there's a guy, like a pickup truck on top of the, I guess the swale area, right? So those are, I think, the kind of some of the parking issues that they're having now. You're not supposed to be parking in the swale space.
I can't speak to what Google is.
All right, so
right now.
yeah, it looks like this was February 2023, so not too long ago. All right, and then so for this trash, this littering, does the owner currently have somebody picking up trash currently?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Pressure cleaning as well with electric pressure cleaners.
And the deliveries?
Deliveries, not yet. We haven't instituted that yet. It's not something that we can do. What we're going to be doing with the deliveries now is, I'm not sure if the board actually illustrates it, but you see these area here, the storage facility, trucks will come in, drop here, and come back out there.
Okay.
So the provisions that you see, the restrictions that you have, those that can be instituted immediately can be under current conditions, but I can't put up an 8-foot wall, nor can I put up the landscaping and the like, because that's part and parcel to the project once an approval is in fact, if an approval is in fact made.
What kind of delivery trucks are being used?
You know what? They're not the. I like to refer to them as box trucks, kind of like the Amazon and or UPS type trucks. Rarely are you going to see the WB 52s, the 52 or 65-foot wheelbase tractor trailers are going to come in and out.
Would like a U-Haul size vehicle be fair? Like one of those 20-foot box big?
That would be the Amazon type of a box truck. Yes.
Okay. I mean, listen, it's sorry to the chair. It's the late hour, and I know that a lot of the residents that are going to be affected by this are here, and they stuck through it, right, among all our conversations. So I would, respectfully ask to hear from them, because we can't have a decision based on just one side of the story.
May I also suggest to you the following? We
If
have
I-
it,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to suggest to you the following. The actual record at the Planning and Zoning Board level was very, very complete. There were many hours spent listening not only to me, unfortunately, but also to the neighbors as well. At the second board meeting, and I heard Chairperson referring to letters being sent. We provided a composition notebook with 1,564 signatures of people in support of this project. Now, many of which were patrons of the actual business itself, but nevertheless in support as well. In addition, the record should contain 10 to 11, I believe, letters from owners of adjacent businesses who also were in support of the project as well. And lastly, the most significant was the note that was provided by the owner immediately to the west of the western terminus of this property, who also indicated no objection to the project. So I'm pleased to answer any other questions and certainly willing to listen to what the neighbors have to say.
Just to refer back, I don't know if you could see on the screen, can you see a map up there? Do you see the Google?
That was those were the vendors that they were
they
mentioning,
are not
like the
anymore.
vendors that were there selling maize, I don't know what, they
In the
were
court.
there. And the owner spoke with them and I pass by every day and they haven't been there, at least in the last 2 weeks, they haven't been
But
there.
according
No, more
to,
than
just to
two.
go back to the question that Councilman Calvo said, it does have that date of February of 2023. And they said that they've been abiding by this for a year. And as we can see, look at, he asked them, which of these have you been abiding by for the year without it being imposed on you? So this was one of the ones that they mentioned that they've been, that they've on their own free will asked them to stop doing. And as we can see, I don't know if you could see it. I don't know if it's clear for you. I
can.
apologize. We see some boxes here, some vendors on the side. And if we continue, this is what the councilman, if correct me if I'm wrong, Councilman, this is what you were referring to, correct? This parking. And then we see over here, some like garbage of doors thrown here on the side. We see some doors here leaning against like the palm trees and the fence on the sidewalk, which imposes danger for anyone that's walking by. If there's someone walking that could fall on them. I don't know if that's like a refrigerated door. If I zoom in from one of those trailer refrigerators that are outside, they just throw here. And on the other side, you see some wood planks on the other side of this bush to the right by that white van. And I mean, it just, to see that, you know, this is going on right here, I don't know. Right here with some boxes, they're opening it up. I mean, they're throwing these cardboards here, it's right on the side. We could see that, what the neighbors have been complaining about,
These were complained, and Mr. Calvo, I may have misunderstood when you posed your question. I did not intend to represent to you that these conditions didn't exist for a period of a year prior to this. It was from the first time that we had our planning and zoning board meeting, which I believe was in March of 2023, followed by a second hearing in April. Yeah, so I can't speak to what occurred prior to that, but this was one of the sources of contention and discussions that we had at the first P&Z board meeting that I was in attendance on, and we heard those complaints.
right?
And we attempted thereafter to meet with all the neighbors. They declined to do so. And we came in for the second board hearing and actually addressed each and every of the issues that were raised. And none of those conditions, I can tell you, exist today.
With all due respect, Mr. Lucas, although the P&Z board heard it just in March, this is something that we've been hearing these complaints for the last year to be a good neighbor. So if I was someone's neighbor, whether I was at the P&Z board or not, and they've been complaining about some kind of behavior and my goodwill, my good faith, and I know that this is coming before, throughout that whole year, I would be on my best behavior, not waiting for someone to tell me how to act in March when they've already been hearing this for the past year.
Understood.
You understand? So this is something that we've been hearing, although the P&Z may have recommended it in March, we've heard it since last year. I think the proposed drawings are gorgeous. I think it looks like Key West. I think it's beautiful. I love the colors. I love the drive-through concept. I love, the outside cabanas. I think it's adorable the way that this is, and very well, the flow of the traffic. However, we have been seeing that this establishment hasn't been good for the neighbors. And I don't know how the council stands on this item. You're recognized.
Thank you. One of the things that I have an issue with, and I spoke with Deborah briefly about it, is I have never, and I've been in the council and planning and zoning. I didn't have kids when I was in planning and zoning. My kids are over 30 years old. And I have never voted for a commercial property to go into the neighborhood. And I made one exception. And it was because the house behind it was owned by the person in front, and all the neighbors wanted them to do that, and they came to the zoning meeting. But I never allow it to go into the neighborhoods, the parking lots, and to expand on the avenue. And I've had a lot of people speak to me and say, well, Vivian, when McDonald's came, they did that. I was at school when McDonald's came, and McDonald's had bought the property that had the property in the back already. And the property that they purchased, and they came to the city and they were considering getting a property into the neighborhood, and they bought the property on East 4th Avenue. So I have, my vote has always been not to go into the neighborhood. Where do you put it? Where do you stop? And I'm going to use a perfect example. A church did that. There was a church in the middle of into the neighborhood, and they bought the house next to it. And I said, you bought the house next to it? Oh, so the priest could live there. Well, they moved the church to that area, and they put a parking lot on either side of the property. So all the neighbors now have parking lots on either side. So I've never done that. I don't want to do it here. But one of the things that I was speaking to Deborah is that they bought the house behind it in order to do parking. And now with the drive-through and the expansion and making it larger, your parking lot, which is a reason why we started this over a year ago, correct? It was a reason we started this. We still need a variance for parking. So what's going to happen in the short term, and I love your presentation. I love what you've done. I love what you're trying to do. But reality is, when they don't fit in that parking lot, they're going to go to the neighbor's swell in front of their house, because it's luckily for them, they still have a swell area in front of their house, because the city has been taking over, making the streets larger and taking the swell area. So they have swell area in front of their house, and they're going to use that and just going to go grab something real quick. And when they get there, they bumped into, a friend and they stayed there longer. They're going to do that throughout the area. And it's not the owner's fault. It's the patrons. We do that because we want to go and eat really fast, and we go and we park in front of somebody's house, and we don't realize if it was my house, I wouldn't want them to do that. For that reason, I can't give them my vote for this, because that's always been my rule. But the fact that we need such a large variance for parking after we purchased a house and it was supposed to be for parking, I can't give you my vote. And I don't want to be the one to say no, but my vote's going to be a no on this item. So and I'm sorry, because it is a beautiful property, but I can't see it. I might have even considered it if they didn't have a variance on the parking. But the fact that we have a variance on the parking, and the neighbors are so adamant about not parking in front of their house and having the issue that you just expand, Next year, you're gonna buy the house next door. And you're gonna expand, and you're gonna do a second floor on the apartment. You know, great, great. We love that businesses grow, but not at the sacrifice of people that are still living in these beautiful neighborhoods that are on 43rd. So with that, I'm sorry.
Through the chair.
Yes, sir, you're recognized.
Thank you. Mr. Lucas, thank you for your presentation. And I'm not saying which way I'm gonna go on this. But did you listen to what the Madam President said? She was on point. This was like a year's probation. This was like a year's probation, and these great neighbors that are in surrounding him wouldn't be here today, and it would be an easy decision for all of us had during that year of probation something had been done. I'd like to trust the owner, you know, that he will comply with this, but it's hard to get the neighbors to trust him because, you know, that's been the case. The complaints have never stopped. And I understand that what we're dealing with here is a request for a variance for a parking lot. We're not talking about the historical here, but there's a lot of promises being made, but that's the concern here. And like I said, the president, everybody else is on point. And during the year when we heard this last, I don't think the situation has improved where the neighbors, you know, let their guard down and said, well, we don't have to show up anymore. I think, you know, we can coexist. And that's the problem. It hasn't happened. Like I said, I'm not saying the way I'm going to go on this, but I understand the neighbors' concerns on this because they haven't seen anything in good faith.
Well,
So far, I mean, this is beautifully done and they've paid you a lot of money to come here and put this together. I understand. But in the end, the neighbors aren't going to live with you next to them. They're going to live with the person they've had there since 2008. And we want every business, that's our job, to help these businesses grow. So it's a dilemma.
I understand your position. May I respond?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All that you say is true. What we have here is we have a business owner who is made and continues to want to make a significant financial investment for the improvement of this property. There are means by which each and every of the concerns of the neighbors can be met. There are also, as you well know, when you approve any type of project, something tantamount to a development agreement of sorts. And you're all familiar with the penalty provisions that exist within those agreements. They are covenants that run with the land. They are binding upon the owner. They are binding upon any successors in interest. If there is a violation of any of those covenants that run with the land, the city of Hialeah is authorized to take a myriad of actions. Revocation of permits. What does that do to somebody who has made a significant financial investment and has certain investment-backed expectations for that particular property? You now have an improved property that is not being authorized to be used for its intended purpose. Why? Because a covenant had been violated. The penalties that I'm referring to that you typically see within a developer's agreement are not something that is unique to this property, but one that the city, just like every other municipality, requires be incorporated in whatever agreement is going to be made in order to enforce the promises that are being made by an owner. A project of this magnitude is not something that simply happens overnight. And you borrowed a term that I tried to drive home in the first two planning and zoning board meetings, and that was the absolute need for a business owner to be respectful of the neighbors and for the neighbors also to be equally respectful, but to coexist. And you have to learn to strike that balance in order to do so. I understand your concerns. I understand the history and the conduct that you're recalling that was the source of discussion a year ago. And the reason why there was a delay of a year in even submitting this plan, which is an improvement on what we had before. But what you didn't have before was an earnest representation, an offer that is being made to impose conditions. And this may not be the only conditions, because there may be other things that you might want to entertain that would be in the nature of the type of enforcement that you could take in order to ensure that if you were to approve this, that you could basically say, we approved it subject to conditions, conditions were violated, the use stops now. Fines will continue to run. There are ways for you to make that enforcement. I can't speak for the past, wasn't here during the past, but I am here making a representation to you as a representative of the owner that these are earnestly, these were worked on after listening for many hours to the complaints of the neighbors. Tried to talk to them all, reached out, emailed, let's have a meeting. Let's at least discuss this. No, we're not interested. So we're here before you, making representations and saying, believe in us. Let's move forward, not worry about the past. And if there are violations, then shame on the owner. It's as simple as that. And I thank you for your
Yes,
consideration.
you're recognized.
What are Lorena, what are the, if they proffered a conditional use, I guess? What could happen if they don't comply? Realistically, as we were speaking earlier, one thing is what's written and the other thing is what we could actually put teeth on.
Right, so enforcement would possibly require litigation. I mean, it would create a dispute about what facts support the breach in this declaration. And you'd need to, if the owner doesn't voluntarily correct what you know, put him on notice on as a violation of this covenant, in order to enforce them, you may have penalty provisions, but they're not necessarily enforced without process, and that would be due process in litigation.
So it's money on the city because we would have to go into litigation.
Prevailing party attorney's fees.
Yeah, correct.
I would offer that as well.
Prevailing party attorney's fees is a double-edged sword, because if the city is wrong, then it would authorize the
correct
defendant to also charge the city its
Correct.
prevailing party fees.
I would never suggest that the city would make a wrong decision.
Smart man.
Yeah. Any other council discussion? We're missing a member.
We have four.
We have enough? Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, for me, motion to deny.
I have a motion to deny by Councilman Caldwell. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Councilwoman Casals Munoz.
Ms. Perez,
Yes.
Mr. Tundidor is away. Mr. Zogby.
No.
Mr. Calvo,
Yes.
Ms. Casals Munoz,
Yes.
motion fails at the pleasure of the council.
Made it.
Yeah.
She needs to take,
Yeah. what
there's a
was-
motion to deny on, and we just. voted,
yes.
so- But it passed because we have quorum.
Was called and the vote was called and it failed. I think if we want.
I
to proceed with the
re-motion.
Motion to deny, we need to make the motion and a second and call the vote again or revive the motion.
Say that again, what happened?
In other words, the clerk called the roll, Mr. Tundador was absent, and there were only 3 votes in favor of the motion and 1 against the motion. That means the motion failed, and the motion was called as having been failed. At this moment, I think the proper procedure would be to have Mr. Cabo.
You just
or
have to
anyone
record.
else,
I re-motion.
Right, make a motion to deny. Let's call for a
Got it.
second and let's call the vote.
Yeah. Second, Calvin, remotion.
No, so we have a motion to deny by Caldwell. We have a second by Councilman Tundidor.
Mr. Tundidor,
Yes.
Mr. Zogby,
No.
Mr. Calvo,
Yes.
Ms. Casal Munoz.
Yes.
Ms. Perez,
Yes.
motion carries. The item has been denied.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank
Thank you. Okay, so that
Through the chair, I have
concludes.
a question for Lorena. Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Lorena, they have the right to continue their business as it is now.
They have a right to continue in operation with whatever has been legally permitted in the property that they.
Correct,
currently own.
right?
Yes.
So
So my
thinking-
understanding is their operations are in a commercially zoned property and they have the appropriate licenses. The application was for an adjacent property in order to rezone for P.
okay, so
So right now they have ownership of the property, but the property is zoned for residential uses, so they can only make use of the property for permitted uses under the code.
the parking lot was the zoning changed on the parking lot?
No.
On the property that was demolished?
Deborah, move the microphone.
Storage. And they were also asking for the parking variance. So I don't, know. You already voted.
No, I understand, but, and we're still
But-
here, but my question is
But
the
to
property.
to improve the conditions for the, I don't know if you can reconsider, but to improve the conditions for the neighbors, maybe you can allow the rezoning of that property where they want to build the storage. They can build the storage there to see if this will alleviate the situation. And when, well, they have the year probation, but at least they have that storage that will allow them to put everything inside, get rid of that trailer that they have there, and at least have a cleaner property. And then, yeah. No,
No, that's on there now.
That can be like amending this application to partially approve the application. So we approve the rezoning to R1 of that little parcel. And that's it. And-
You see, and the reason that I'm asking this is
And
we
the-
live
and-
here and we're thinking we're doing something right, and the neighbors still have a business in the condition that it is.
And he still has the parking lot with a container there where he's storing his things. He don't have any resource to improve that situation. So if you approve that rezoning, he can build that. And I don't know if you want to approve that to P parking or not, but in this way, you approve the P parking, they build a new parking. You can say, no, now we don't want the drive-through.
We don't
You
want the
only
drive-through, we don't want
Yeah,
the
yeah.
expansion, we
You
don't
on-
want
you
anything, and we
only
just
do-
want the
you only
parking.
Do a parking and you do your storage, and then you show us that the parking is.
So
enough.
those are our options.
Yeah, those are options then.
Right.
And the
so-
storage is the one that's already within the
storage
plan,
is-
but it would
yeah.
be moved over to the other parcel, correct? It's on the lower portion. So that would move on to the actual, because that's the alley. So you would move it over, you would leave it there.
That's her property anyways.
And the existing property right now in that building? Right. Right. The storage? Right. Right.
This half of the parking will stay there with that trailer and the code enforcement goes and the neighbors need to work on the same situation. You won't do it. So it will be like what happened in the video, to approve this and to approve the thing, so they can do the parking and this, and they don't build the expansion that they are planning.
I think there,
They were in this commercial, so can they just build this storage without this land use commercial, but they're not one. Oh, I see. So they are rezoning that.
if I might just make one observation, I think you just raised a good point regarding the parking lot at the western end of this property. The request for the change of zoning was to P, which means it could only be used for parking, never
Right.
going to be improved upon for any other purposes. And it might be something that can be considered by the council in terms of a partial remedy to address the parking concerns that we would have hoped to have alleviated through the approval of this plan. But if it's not an approval of the entire plan, perhaps to Ms. Storch's point, a partial approval might be something that could be entertained.
So, and I was thinking about that as we're saying no to this. they still have to live with this.
The fence is still up and that's
And,
still
and
grass.
in the
Yeah.
year and something, nothing has been done.
Yeah.
I don't know how does my.
And
how
they're
do my
not gonna be on the
colleagues feel?
field. Would you like to speak on this item? I think we need to come up with a happy medium. And I know that we typically don't do this, but I would like to allow you to speak, to give your input, because you live there.
Thank you, Madam President. David Perez, 322 East of 43rd Street, and I'm 2 doors down from this now empty lot. And to, I think, clarify your question, Councilwoman Gonzalez Munoz, on the property that directly abuts the restaurant right now, that is an easement. And it is, the current zoning is R1.
Correct.
I looked it up.
Yes.
Look on the property.
Deborah
appraisers.
just said it.
It's R1.
Yes.
So what they're asking for is not only the easement, but also this single family lot now to
Correct.
be changed. And, you know, the issues were brought up when we saw Google pictures earlier of the restaurant. There was, I believe, you know, a code violation right there that was just ignored. I think staff went out there earlier this year and the applicant enclosed an outside area. He was told he couldn't do that, and it is still enclosed. You know, past behavior is a great indicator of your future. And as you said, we've had issues with the owner, and none of the recommendations that were proffered through this process were addressed until the applicant started the process all over again. That's when the vendors, the street side vendors went away. That's when some of the improvements started happening because it was upon the residents. Once the residents saw the cards that there was a possible zoning change that was going to happen, that's when everything came up. The applicant introduced over 1,500 signatures from patrons. I wish staff would have presented the over 83 signatures
No,
that
we-
were
we got it.
collected.
We got
did.
it. We got it.
Okay.
We got it.
There were 83 signatures up and down the block. People have concerns with this. And yes, the attorney reached out and we explained to the attorney. He was looking at us, at me and my wife, to be the spokespeople for the neighborhood. We told him, you can go and talk to the other 82 residents up and down the street. But it was easier to reach out to us, and it was easier to reach out to the 90-year-old neighbor that's going to be directly affected by this. He did not reach out to the over 80+ residents that signed this petition. We still have concerns with this, and ultimately, what we would like to see is what you said earlier. Stop the westward movement into the neighborhoods. McDonald's was denied, and there was other businesses throughout Hialeah who tried to do the same, and they were told no. If you look at the rendering, that parking lot will now directly face another residential home
Correct.
across the street. You're going further and further west into the neighborhood, which is now a storage place and a food prep area going further west into the neighborhood. We're
Okay.
against that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if there's a motion to reconsider or if this just is table, that's it, it's denied, it is what it is, and we come
It's
up
denied,
with.
and then if we.
And if the applicant later on wants to submit something else, I guess
They,
have the
they
right
can,
to.
and if, and
Okay.
maybe something smaller.
Yeah.
Maybe something smaller, and maybe they, maybe what we have to do is make sure that the residents don't have to come out here again and complain about it
Right.
and keep a watchful eye on what goes on.
All right,
But apparently
then-
none of my colleagues are thinking of anything different at the moment.
no, I mean,
Right?
it's denied, so.
It's tonight.
All right, so we're gonna adjourn. I guess our next city council meeting will be
We don't have any
Tuesday,
other
May
item?
23rd. No, that's it.
Okay.
Yep.
Motion to adjourn.
Good night.